Good evening, everybody. How are you all tonight? Hard to believe it's already Thursday. Crazy, crazy, crazy week so far. Hope yours is going well. Thank you, guys. If you could continue to like and share the live, I would really appreciate that. Happy February. Happy Black History Month. Rabbit, rabbit, rabbit. Yo, hey, Mr. Omar, how are you? Thank you, guys, for doing that. Appreciate that. So, real quick, I want to talk about a couple of things. So, I've turned off the gift feature on live tonight. Actually, there's Anthony. I want to bring him up so he can be part of this conversation too. Um, hey, brother, how are you? Hello, Anthony.
Can you hear me?
I can now. Yep.
Okay.
I was just saying. So I turned off the gifting feature tonight. There is it's been a recognized trend that a lot of Black creators in particular, for some particular reason, you can make your own assumptions and opinions, form your own opinions about that. A lot of their content gets suppressed on TikTok. Um, White creators can be talking about the same thing, and there seems to be a difference in how TikTok promotes those particular videos. So there's a campaign that starts technically tomorrow, but I decided I want to start tonight. It's called hashtag CoinCot. So the idea behind it is that because TikTok gets revenue from coins that are shared between content creators, people who receive those. So the idea is that for the next week, you turn off that feature. Hopefully that will get TikTok's attention because they'll see CoinCot. So if you want to do hashtag CoinCot in the chat, CoinCot, just like it's spelled, just like it sounds, that will be an opportunity to kind of raise awareness to this. So there will be no gifts available this evening. I apologize for that, but I think it's a really good cause. If you don't know how to do it, if you're a live creator and you don't know how to do it, it's in your settings. If you go to the settings within your live, you can turn off that feature when you do it. So I just wanted to do that. If you would like to share or to support the channel, that's my Cash App. But again, no obligations there. So I just wanted to share that because I think it's a really good thing, and it's an opportunity as a large platform, right? It's something that we can do, and let's see where it goes. So let's see where it goes. How are you tonight, brother?
I'm doing good.
Good.
Today is my sobriety birthday, so today is 13 years.
Congrats, man.
Thank you.
Congratulations. Good
Thank
for
you.
you. Good for you.
Yep. Feels
That's
good.
great. Good for
It's
you.
better than being a dick and drinking.
Your words.
Not that I'm opposed to what people do in their personal lives, because that's none of my goddamn business.
I got that. I got that. So, a couple things in the news that I kind of wanted to talk about, and then we'll get into media literacy, our topic for this evening. Um, so, there's a story out of Indiana. I don't know if you saw this, Anthony, but some children were at the state house in Indiana asking Indiana legislators to answer some questions regarding gun legislation. And when they approached a particular lawmaker, his name was Jim Lucas, they asked him questions about what can they do legislatively to address gun violence. And he flashed his holstered handgun while talking to these kids. And his argument was, I'm doing this to make you feel safer. And all of them said, I don't feel safer. So it's just an example of how the GOP is just wildly out of touch on that particular topic. Speaking of being wildly out of touch on topics, in Florida, there has been a big push by the residents of the state of Florida to add reproductive rights to ballot measures for this particular fall. They overwhelmingly surpassed the minimum they needed to have petitions to have it on the ballot. So what does the GOP do? In their constitution, it requires a 60% of the voters to submit for a constitutional amendment. So the GOP in Florida wants to raise that bar from 60% to 66%. So they obviously paid attention to what happened in Ohio because Ohio tried to do the same thing and the voters there said nope. So there you go. Again, another example of how the GOP is so wildly out of touch on so many things. Not surprising. Not surprising at all, sadly. And then also, this is an interesting story, and it has a personal connection to me. So Elmo, everybody's favorite red monster, um, inadvertently asked people how they were doing. About 180 via Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, about 187 million views on that particular post. They ranged from a variety of things, but more specifically, um, people were overwhelmingly sad or frustrated or angst filled. And the reason I say it's a personal thing to me, because when my daughter was little, she loved Elmo. And when she got sick with cancer the first time, she was a Make-A-Wish kid. And when we were asked, so what happens if you ever receive Make-A-Wish? These wish granters who are angels on earth come to your house, and your family is in chaos, and your kid's sick, and you don't know what's going on, and they say, "What do you want to do?" And my daughter was 5 at the time, and she said, "I want to play with Elmo on the beach." And her mom and I were like, "What? What is she talking about?" We had no idea what she was talking about. About 2 weeks before, we got a promotional DVD in the mail from Sandals in Jamaica that has Sesame Street on the beach. And that's what it was. So that was her wish. So we went to Jamaica. Make-A-Wish took care of us, and my daughter got breakfast and a bedtime story hour with Elmo. And then finding out later, her respiratory therapist at the hospital did an Elmo impression. So Elmo's been a part of my life for a very, very long time. So thank you, Elmo, for checking in on people. I really appreciate that. All right, tonight we're going to talk media literacy. So Anthony and I we talked about this a little bit today, and I think it's really important topic, a really important topic. It's something that what I do for work. It's part of what I do for work requires me to be factual. I have clients that depend on the accuracy of information for people. I write speeches, I do press, I do media relations. So it's really important that we have a conversation about media literacy and what it means. So I just made some notes here, and I captured a couple of headlines that I think will sort of drive this conversation. Headlines, by the way, that are always sort of designed. First of all, let me back up a second. Headlines in general are designed to kind of elicit an emotional response. That's the goal. Clickbait, call whatever you want, and they do, and that's part of the challenge that we face when it comes to people that are just being drawn in by headlines. If you combine a lack of media literacy with sort of a lack of critical thinking, that kind of puts us into that dangerous spot, and that forces people to seek out confirmation bias. So a confirmation bias is, as it describes, you tend to seek out information that only supports your particular narrative, right? And we all have inherent biases, and media is inherently biased. There's a difference, though, between being biased and being, inaccurate and non-factual. There's a huge difference, and we'll talk a little bit about as we go through the evening about some of the tools that I've used in the past to kind of confirm sources and to check the credibility of sources. But here's an example of some headlines that I found over the past couple of years that were designed to create an emotional response. This one's appropriate now. Caravan of illegals invades southern border. Caravan illegals invades. So those are the words that are intentionally there to draw people in. And if you're unwilling to do the work, people will be like, wow, yeah, see, there's a caravan of illegals at the southern border. And if you read a little bit more about the story, as we know, there's a lot of hyperbole tied to that. Democrats push for post-birth abortion. Democrats, post-birth abortion. We know that that's not true. There is no such thing as a post-birth abortion. Woke ideologies means litter boxes in schools. We know that that was never the case. We know what those litter boxes were for. Well, they weren't even litter boxes. They were buckets of sand that were used during active shooter drills or lockdowns. Smoking gun bank statements sink China Joe. Again, headlines that are intended to draw people in without understanding what's behind it or whether or not the source is even valid. Woke prosecutors interfering in Trump's path to presidency. Once again, connecting what does woke have to do with anything? It doesn't. So that's part of the narrative that we're told. Speaker Johnson releases all, and ALL are capitalized, Speaker Johnson releases all January 6th footage. So that's to imply to the people who are willing to or are susceptible to that to say, see, we knew it. There was stuff that they weren't telling us. When come to find out, it was just more of the same. And then this was recent. Schools in New York closed for students, but open for migrants. So that happened over MLK weekend. The building was closed. There was a massive snowstorm and deep freeze in New York. Students weren't due back to school until Tuesday, so they opened the doors for people who are houseless. Um, so that's part of the conversation here. So I'd like to talk to people tonight. If you ever have any questions about media literacy, and to my friends on the right, I really hope we can have a positive and productive conversation about this evening because it's really dangerous.
Yeah.
And there are a few sources that we can talk about, and I can help people navigate if you're interested. But I think it's a really good opportunity for all of us to learn together. So let's jump in, see what we can
Right
uncover
on.
tonight. Kicking, how are you tonight?
Oh, how you doing?
Doing fine, thank you.
Well, I'm a famous celebrity, if I may
You are
put that out. Yes,
okay.
I'm a famous singer.
Cool.
So, letting that be known, I love what you just said. Is a lot of misinformation has been across the airways,
Hmm.
and whew, with the children, the book burnings, and looking at what actually Trump is doing is a con game against America once again in 2024 that he did in 2016 of his criminal behavior that was happening before he became a president in the charges he had back then. If I'm off topic, let me know.
No, you're fine.
So, looking back to 2016 of what Hillary said on that stage was that he was going to do exactly what she said he was going to do, destroy America. He was going to divide it and destroy it. Because this is Donald Trump's path all through life. How many people has lawyers that went to prison throughout his life?
Hmm.
How many people have lost law license, jobs, anything that had dealt with him has lost. Even to right now, what her name, Alina Hobbit, is losing her law license. He's a destruction, a wrecking ball.
Yeah, I mean Hillary was right pretty much about everything, and I'm not the biggest Hillary Clinton fan in the world for sure, but she was right about everything.
But if you look at it, what have he done to make America great, as he said? Where did we benefit from 2016 to 2020 that he did to benefit the American people? With COVID, loss of jobs,
Hmm.
recessions, inflations. You know what I mean? This is the Republicans to this day saying the same thing: shutdown, inflation. I mean, not inflation, but the shutdowns, and the government was one of the things that they playing right now is recessions. The
Yeah,
Republican Congress of MAGA has not done anything in the last 4 years but chase after ghosts
that's true.
and saving Trump.
That's right.
Two
And there's no
things until the
there's no recession for
Well, what
sure.
it was the federal prosecutor and the state prosecutors had to threaten Jim Jordan of being charged himself, where he backed off of that crap. Then he went into the Hunter Biden, where they came with Hunter Biden's lawyers coming up there, going to sue, the actual congressional committee of theft of his laptop from in tampering. You know what I mean? They
Yeah,
backed off that. Then it came down here to the Biden crime family. They can't find nothing, but yet took it behind the closed door, behind the witnesses, and came back out and said it was totally what they said was the evidence and this. Then when it came out of the transcripts, it was nothing that they said was true. This has been a lie.
Yeah, it's part of the conversation tonight that we're having is about we know that there's records of over 35,000 lies that Trump told during his presidency, and that's part of this conversation tonight that we want to make sure that
And
we
I'm
can
saying with the
that we
GOP
can
right now, the
navigate through it.
GOP, the
Yep,
Republican Party to this day is still backing the criminal.
yep,
They can't save him.
they are. You're right.
They, if an innocent man keeps saying he has total immunity, that's nowhere in the Constitution, nowhere in the Constitution, nowhere in Article 2 that says a president has total immunity. If that
That's
was, it was a dictator.
that's right, friend. I want to try to stay on topic tonight. So, did you have anything specific regarding media literacy, or is there is I kind of would like to stay on topic if we can.
Oh, I'm sorry. What is the actual topic? And I
Well,
might have to move it.
we're talking about media literacy this evening and how we help people navigate through the minefield that is misinformation. But I appreciate your perspective. I really do.
Well, how you mitigate it is looking at actual several real reporters that's reporting it.
That's right. That's exactly how we
Not
do it.
Fox News, not right-wing propaganda channels. It has to be with real news.
That's right. That's right. Well, I
That's
appreciate you
really
joining
right.
tonight, sir. I do want to bring up some other folks, so thank you for jumping in
Okay, well,
tonight. I
thank you
appreciate
so
you.
much. Y'all
You
have a
got it.
great day.
You too.
Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.
Hey, really quick, an
Yeah.
interesting side effect of you turning GIFs off is I can't look at somebody's profile.
I just did that, and I wanted to test it. Um, because
Why is that connected?
I don't know. I was able to look at yours. I can look at yours.
I, I I tried clicking on his and I couldn't find out. Like he's like, oh, I'm a famous singer. I'm like, oh shit, who are you? Click and then nothing.
Yeah. Well, I think we're gonna have to ride that out tonight because I want to support the
Yeah, no,
cause.
no, no, no.
So
I'm fine. But my point is, why would you have engineered something like that, TikTok, when
and
you
it's
have?
interesting. I wonder if it's for people that are on the panel because I was able to see it. I was able to look. I could see,
Oh,
I can see your profile. It's interesting.
interesting. I wonder
Yeah.
if it's a settings thing because that would be like a really weird thing to do from a safety perspective,
It
right?
would indeed. It would indeed.
Yeah.
Yes, it really would. We'll see how that goes. It may be a panel
Okay.
thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Um, Bukowski, how are you this evening?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing fine, thank you. What's on your mind tonight?
Well, about the media literacy thing, I may
Yeah.
have mentioned this to you before,
Okay.
but I'm standing firm that all started with Ronald Reagan and the Fairness Doctrine.
Yep.
That's something that we need to look into getting back
I would agree. I
because
would
I
agree.
feel like that's what separated us the most.
Yeah, I mean, I think that it's a good example. The dawn of cable news, Fox used to be, they fair and balanced. They used to be Fox Entertainment, and you're right. The Fairness Doctrine removed the guardrails on what is to be considered journalism, and how it's approached, and most people ignored it. And now you've got Fox, you've got OAN, you've got Newsmax, you've got Breitbart, you've got a lot of news agencies that claim to be news and they're not. They're strictly entertainment. They're there for their donors and their corporate landlords, so to speak.
Yeah, I was watching a TikTok the other day, and I guess it was that I can't stand her, that Laura Ingraham or whatever from Fox.
Yeah,
She still refers to the former bag of shit as President Trump. They don't
I
say
know.
former president. They keep saying president. So it's got to be confusing for the poorly educated.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that's part of it, though, right? Again, that's part of the
Yeah,
misinformation.
that's what keeps
Yeah,
the fire going.
yeah,
But yeah, I wish like hell we had the fairness doctrine.
yeah. It is something to consider. I mean, one thing that we do need to talk about too, especially if you look at Project 2025. One of the features of Project 2025 is they consolidate power to the executive branch. They call it the unitary executive. And one of the things that they identify is the FEC, or I'm sorry, the FCC, which is the Federal Communications Commission, which means that
Yeah,
the federal government then would tell us as consumers what we would be able to watch and how we would watch it.
and I'm sure that went in there because of Trump's fallout with Rupert Murdoch because Ronald Reagan made Rupert Murdoch the head of the FCC. So
Yeah,
I'm
well,
sure that's got a lot to do with changing that.
I'm sure it would. Yeah. But thank you, Bukowski. I appreciate your perspective on that, brother. Thank you very much.
Yeah, I'm just hoping somebody will hear this and they'll look it up and further educate themselves on it.
Yeah, no, I agree.
I wish
It's
we
a good.
could write in stuff. It'd be nice if in our elections we could write in like people like when people wrote in Joe Biden in New Hampshire when he wasn't even on the ballot. I wish that voters could write in things that they want, like the fairness doctrine back.
I know. That's a good point. That's a good point. Thank you for jumping in tonight, Bukowski. I appreciate you.
Heck yeah, I'm going to stick around and watch this.
Okay. Appreciate you, brother. Thanks a lot.
One of the
Yep.
things I'm wondering is because I've been looking at that. First of all, the fairness doctrine was poorly written, right? So the roots of the FCC goes back to 1949. So we already know that as an entity, it needs to be completely torn down and rebuilt, right? Because it's everything about it is out of date. But how did the FCC get the power to abolish the doctrine itself, right? And this goes back to Congress is 80% legacy thinking, right? They create a law,
Precedent.
they never look at it again,
Yep.
right? And this is a prime example of, well, what were you thinking in 1949? Things were a lot different, right?
Yeah.
How
Yeah.
is it that from 1949 to 1987 everything was kosher dill pickle, and then all of a sudden Congress in 1987 you're asleep at the switch, and the fairness doctrine disappears because a body under your congressional control and audit makes a unilateral decision. Oh,
Money,
I
money,
know it's
money.
all yeah, but so it's not necessarily bring the fairness doctrine back. It's get the FCC aligned and give them regulations that they are boxed into, that they don't get to arbitrarily decide these types of things, right? That it takes an act of Congress. But the problem is with all of this, it would be nice to have media literacy, right? And it'd be really nice for one person on the right to come up and discuss what they think is misleading and deceptive, which is like the first set of definitions in clickbait,
Mm-hmm.
right? And what why is it that they can always talk about the headline but they can never talk about the actual article?
Well, that's intentional.
Yes, it's almost as if people don't want to read or cannot read,
Yeah. I mean, well, we know
right?
that the reading level of the average American is fifth grade, I think.
I think, yeah,
Fourth or fifth grade, something like that. So that's disturbing in and of itself. It's not. So we should qualify that. It's not the ability to read; it's comprehension more than anything else. So it's understanding what it is that you're reading,
yeah,
and that's part of it. So as consumers, when we consume media, think about where we get our media from. We get it from, the device in our hand. Most people do these days, whether it be TV or print or whatever it might be.
yeah,
Um, we seek out our confirmation biases because that makes it's a safe space for us. And the people who have critical thinking skills, when you are drawn to something, your radar should go off to say, does that make sense? Like, I am a consumer of media. I have to for the type of work that I do. I need to know what's going on across all spectrums. And you can see, especially the last 5, 6, 7 years, I've just noticed a massive push by the right in particular to increase their sensationalized headlines
yeah,
by intentionally,
yeah,
intentionally,
yeah,
um,
100%.
which taps right into that confirmation bias. And again, we all have it, right? We all have our go-to. We all have our trusted. Like for me, I've been asked this question. Like I grew up watching like ABC News, and CBS News and Dan Rather and things like that. So those are comfortable environments for me, and those score very well when it comes to the media bias component, more or less right down the middle. They always score very high for factually reporting. Now, when we talk about bias in journalism, in particular, cable news and or news in general,
Yeah,
bias is built in the way in which they package. Like I don't like CNN, I just don't like I don't like their programming. I don't like the way that they're formatted. I don't like their anchors, and I
Yeah.
just don't like the package. But so they're biased, but they're biased in a way, the type of people that they have on their staff, what the genders are of their anchors, what their orientations are, how they present the news. Same thing with Fox, same thing with MSNBC. The difference between like MSNBC and Fox is because there's reputational credibility connected to NBC and others. And we know that Fox, they lost a $750 million lawsuit because of their lies and because of their defamation and because of everything else. And they're getting sued again. So that's a credibility marker. In fact, when you run Fox News, we can do it right now. I have the
Yeah.
mediabiasfactcheck.com pulled up, and we can do it right now. It will give us a scorecard. And by the way, Media Bias Fact Check is self-funded. They have a team of people that do this research. They are as down the middle as you can possibly get. They do this as a service to provide this research. So when you go to
Yeah.
Fox News, it gives you a score, and they have a graph. They rank Fox mixed when it comes to factually reporting, but highly extreme right. And then every agency, every news entity gets a scorecard. So they are overall, we rate Fox News right biased on editorial positions that align with the right, questionable due to promotion of propaganda, conspiracy theories, pseudoscience, the use of poor sources, numerous false claims, and failed fact checks. Straight news reporting from beat reporters is generally fact-based and accurate, which earns them a mixed factual rating. So overall, low credibility. So that should
Yeah.
tell you something as a person who consumes Fox, that the source that you're getting your news from is biased, extreme right, and low credibility when it comes to the news. So we'll talk more about this as we go through the evening, but I think this is an important conversation because it's going to ramp up like crazy. Hello,
Yeah.
friend.
Hey there.
How you doing?
I'm doing all right, I reckon.
I reckon.
I reckon.
Yeah. What's on your mind this evening?
So interesting. You were talking about the readability,
Yeah.
and it's one of those issues that. Oh, sorry. Hang on just a second.
Uh-oh.
The readability, reading me, whether it's newspapers or um, prompts or anything like that, follows a specific format that is not typical reading. It's not narrative reading. It is designed to have a hook, then provide basic information, and then follow up information. And sometimes reading all the way to the end of an article is mind numbing.
True.
That's why people will stick with the first two sentences of an article without ever checking to see what the rest of the substantiating information is.
It's true.
Yeah.
A lot of people think, well, I read the article. No, you read the opening paragraph that was designed as a hook. You didn't read the supporting information that provided you more detail about it.
That dog needs a biscuit. You will give that dog a biscuit stat.
I
Or
reckon.
some pets. Or some bellies. I love dogs.
Me too. You're right. You're right, Jeannie. I mean, I think and that's exactly the point of this conversation. It's trying to get people to understand that you've got to go beyond the headlines. And, those of us that are on the left that stand on the platform of fact and accurate information and the truth, it's frustrating. I mean, it's frustrating to me personally because this information exists out there. It's public consumption. It's publicly consumable, but you've got to be willing to do it and find it and look for it.
Absolutely. And it's like people talking about, I've read the science. Well, in many cases, they've read the abstract. They've not read the entire academic article. They've not read the entire published document to see, what it is that it actually says. And many times people will come to me and they will offer up a citation of something and it will mimic. And I get to the page that they have quoted to me and it says the exact opposite of what they are trying to convince me of. Because
That's right.
the abstract, but they didn't read into the information. And, one of the biggest cases in point that I run into, in fact, I dealt with it today, is the documentation on that the human brain doesn't develop until it's 26 years old. And that partial information has been the foundation of so much erroneous legislation that right now, people are pushing to get the voting age changed because of that false. And when
Exactly.
people try to use that to make themselves sound smarter, I have actually read the very thing that they gave me as a citation, and they tune out. They don't even want to listen to the entire thing because it is too far beyond their attention span to be able to grasp it.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, you bring up a good point, Jeannie. I mean, if you think about the specifics around why when Twitter started to blow up, it was only 140 characters. That has to do with attention span, right? So people want their information succinctly, characters. They're not willing to read. So that's why, like, I'm a big op-ed guy. I love to read op-eds. I always have. I mean, my mother turned me on to op-eds. I'm like, this is fascinating. It's like an opinion piece. Again, somebody should be able to discern the difference between reporting journalism and an opinion piece, because an opinion piece is just that, right? The New York Times opinion pages. So I spent some of the greatest times in my life reading those things. Yes, I am that kind of person. But to your point, people have got to be willing to invest the time to try to make themselves better, try to understand the information better, because as we know, misinformation is dangerous. I don't know how else to describe it.
And I admit I own up to the news that I cover, the news stories that I present. The large majority of those stories come from biased sources. I
Mhm.
acknowledge bias right up
Sure,
front.
sure.
In acknowledging the bias, I don't just sit there and own up to it 100% and say, well, this is how it is. I try to go back in the sources. I try to go back to the sources that gave that article you know, the facts that they then used their own bias to present.
Right,
And,
exactly.
the reason why I have to use bias media is that mainstream media doesn't pick up enough of these ideas especially when it comes to the LGBTQ plus community. There's not enough coverage in this specific area. So I use that bias source because they provide much more avenues of discovery, but then go back and provide the analysis that tries to get past the bias that was written into the original article.
That's right.
It takes a lot of
That's
effort.
right.
It takes a lot of effort to do that.
It does. You're absolutely right. Like with anything else, right? I mean, if you're just going to allow yourself to accept, and this goes to people on the left as well. If you can be, it doesn't really matter your political affiliation. You can be biased and you can be influenced by one source of news. I would encourage everybody to make sure that they're paying attention to like you can find information on the same story. If you want to give yourself an exercise and blow your mind, you can pick a topic and then use that topic in your search query, whether it be in Google or DuckDuckGo or whatever it might be, and then just go down the list and look at the way the same topic, the same subject is reported, and you'll see exactly what that bias looks like. Like I said earlier, like the words that are used intentionally to sensationalize: caravan of illegals invades, right? Smoking gun, bank statements, woke prosecutors, woke ideologies, litter boxes, things like that. It's intended to draw out emotion, and it does,
Right.
and we've seen it. We've seen it.
Yeah, absolutely. And
Yeah.
somebody asked the question about, and this is a really good question. It's not, I think this is one that deserves to get addressed. The question because do you have a bias in how you're trying to correct the bias? Yes,
Sure.
but self-awareness of your bias, knowing what your bias is, and in having integrity, being able to say, here is what my bias is. If we look at this from my bias, this is how I respond. But if I am self-aware and know what my bias is, and I want to present the basic information, I know where that bias lies and can remove as much of it as possible to provide basic fact.
Well said, friend. Well said. I appreciate you joining tonight. Thank you very
You bet.
much. I really
Thank
appreciate
you.
it. Have a good
Thank
night.
you.
See you later. Bye.
Because you can't yeehaw with hats, I thought I'd put on my yeehaw hat for you.
Yeah. So yes, something she said is interesting, and I wanted to respond to that while I saw a comment in the chat. It's not about my news sources being better than news sources that I write. That's not the point of this conversation. The
Yeah.
point of this conversation is to inform everybody that it's to be a responsible member of society. If you want to talk about topics, if you want to learn more about topics, then you've got to spend the time to understand where the source comes from. YouTube, Facebook, those are not sources.
What?
I know, right?
Man.
Exactly. I mean, those are not sources. Now, somebody, if there's a story that is backed up from credibility and then it's displayed on YouTube, sure, that could be considered a source. Again, it still requires some critical thinking to determine where it comes from. So it's not about my news sources being better than Anthony's or Anthony's being better than somebody else's on the right. That's not the point of this conversation. The point of this conversation is to understand specifically where do you get your news from, for example. So nothing at all. Perfect example. Thank you for that comment. Russian collusion. So what do we know about what happened with Russia? We know that Russia interfered with the 2016 election. We know that from the Mueller report. We know that. The collusion element just turned into this whole conversation to try to distract from what actually happened. It's a great example. I appreciate you sharing that. We certainly know that members of the Russian government colluded with members of the Trump campaign to attempt to influence the 2016 election. We know that. But that entire case was more about election interference and obstruction of justice. That's what that case was about. So that was a good. I don't think that went the way that you wanted it to go, there, commenter. But that's okay.
Right?
Exactly. Hello, Chris. I don't think Chris is able to connect. Chris, you can request again. Feel free. So, and again, I think that I don't want people, hopefully we can have an understanding about a few things. First of all, mainstream media is not the left. Okay?
Right.
Mainstream media is mainstream media. There is no more mainstream media than Fox. Okay?
Right.
So people need to understand that. CNN is owned by a conservative. All right.
Yep.
So we got to dispel that notion right away. Mainstream media. So whenever people on the right, when people say mainstream media, I don't think you think Fox. You need to start thinking Fox. OAN, Newsmax, not mainstream media. They're not mainstream. Think mainstream. Right. Think network news. Right. Think ABC, CBS, NBC, MSNBC, CNN, places like that. PBS, not so much. I wouldn't consider them mainstream. AP, Reuters would be mainstream on the print side. But generally speaking, by definition, mainstream, the way people think about it, is what they're consuming visually.
Yeah.
Cable news. In the 24-hour news cycle, going back to the fairness doctrine, the 24-hour news cycle is what kind of has created this monstrosity. Because again, depending on what your biases are, you'll seek it out. I mean, we know from reporting at Fox, we know that during the deposition, all the information that came out, their goal was to attract blonde-haired, buxom women to tell the news. That was their business model because they wanted to attract a certain type of viewer. And again, I hope people don't take this personally, but this is the way it is. They wanted to go after younger men or middle-aged white men who they felt could be easily manipulated. Tucker Carlson, in the deposition prior to the Dominion lawsuit, referred to Fox viewers as ignorant cousin effers. So that should tell you a lot about what their intention is when they share information with you. So again, biased news is dangerous no matter where you get it from, and we all have it.
Yep.
Um, what have you learned over the years when it comes to that? Did you have biases, Anthony?
Yeah, oh, 100%. And I think a lot of it for me came from the military,
Sure.
right? So when when I got to Brandeis, that was 1992. I was still in the reserve, so I got discharged in 94. My entire world view and the way I interpreted news was based on a set of principles that really weren't critical thinking frameworks. It was more like, well, this guy's an officer in the military. He went to college. He must be pretty smart. He probably knows what he's talking about. I'll just do what he says. Or I'll now this now I remember this distinctly. They sat us down and literally told us who to vote for and why
Sure.
during a presidential election, and I will die on that fucking hill because I remember that day distinctly. And if I think I can tell you exactly how many officers were there, probably their rank and probably at least their first or last name, and the fact that they went on this fucking rant for 45 minutes before we were able to vote. This is the framework that I entered a university with, right? So that was my bias lens, right? And it took me a very long time to get out of that. It probably wasn't until 99 2000 before I started waking up,
Mm,
right? And so when we talk about woke, that has to do with thinking critically, examining, questioning, researching,
yep.
getting books, right?
Yep.
Asking other peers questions to check yourself, right? Being
Exactly.
woke is a really good thing.
I
And we need
agree.
more woke in the media also.
Yeah, we do. I mean, that's a really good perspective. I think for me, and I think what you're talking about too is education helps because
Yeah.
when the more educated you become, like you don't necessarily take a class in critical thinking, right? It's not something you can that there are some curriculum around it, but critical thinking is a skill that you learn as you grow, as you gain knowledge. It's like a muscle. Like if any other skill, you get better at it the more you practice understanding what something means. To Jeannie's point a little bit earlier, that comprehension component. Like if you don't understand the topic, then we see it all the time. People think they're experts on virology, economics, whatever it might be, and it just makes you look silly. I would never claim to be an expert in any of those fields, but I'm willing to do some research so I can at least speak to it with some level of understanding. Um, you
Yes.
know, we have
Yes.
people that don't understand the Constitution in our country, yet they claim to be constitutionalists, right?
Yeah.
And that again, that's another dangerous situation that we put ourselves in. I'm gonna Chris requested again, so we can bring him up this time. Hey,
Say
Chris, how are you tonight?
I'm well. How are you?
Doing
Graybeards
fine.
unite.
I'm sorry.
I said graybeards unite.
Hell yeah,
So, thank you for letting me up. First of all, I've been
sure.
listening to you for a long time. I just wanted to jump up. I was listening to Jeannie earlier. You were talking about um, news sources and bias and stuff, and I just wanted to draw a real clear distinction as to what we're talking about with bias. Like you can look at a news source. Does their bias guide the stories that they are covering? Yes. Does it
Yeah,
make the facts of the story that they're covering false automatically because of the bias? No. No.
well said.
And
Yeah,
that's like if you look at especially the distinction between left wing and right wing, news sources. I would argue that the left wing, even MSNBC, take Rachel Maddow. She
hmm
takes journalistic ethics extremely seriously,
she does.
and does does her bias guide the stories that she goes after when she sees, something that needs to be covered that's personal to her? Sure.
Absolutely.
But that's what we're talking about here. And it's really hard for these MAGA guys to draw that distinction, that they think, oh, liberal media means that they're lying. And that is absolutely not true.
Here's a great example, Chris, real-time example. The whole situation regarding Taylor Swift and Jason Kelsey, or Travis Kelsey. We were talking about this last
Yes.
night, about how the right believes that it's a psyop, that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelsey are a couple, and that they're plants by the DNC with their only goal is to get more voters. That's it, right? That's a perfect example. Meanwhile, the left is like, Taylor Swift's a pop star and her boyfriend's a football player and in the Super Bowl, and we're sick of talking about it. So, that's a good example.
100%. 100%. I mean, but we're also getting into, more serious, and I love that example because it's perfect. But we're also looking at, like, I was literally just listening to a live. I listen to a lot of conservative lives.
Me too.
I want to hear what they're talking about, and it's this narrative that Project 2025. What is that? I've never even heard of that. Who's behind that? Project 2025. And oh, you know who wrote Project 2025? Mike Pence, the rhino. Or you think Donald Trump agree? They're actually trying to couch that as a rhino thing that has nothing to do with Donald Trump and what the real deep state actually wants to do if they get another conservative into office.
That's exactly right. That's very well said. Look, when we bring up another example to what you're talking about, the indictments, right? So it's not liberal propaganda. They're actual court documents that if we could get people to read them, doesn't mean that they would change their mind. But the overwhelming, over 90% of the people that I talk to, it's even higher than that. Probably 95% of the people that I speak to that are MAGA have not read it. Or what they'll say is like, yeah, I read some of it.
Anything.
I read some of it. No, you didn't read any of it when you say that. That's another example, right?
Well, you were just talking about you're an op-ed guy. Me too, man. When I was a kid, I loved the op-ed sections. Loved, but I mean, look at where we've just seen recently. What Americans are reading at a third, fourth grade reading level.
Yeah.
They don't read. They don't want to read.
Exactly.
That they want that 140 character little snippet of something they can repost, and
That's exactly right. Yeah, and that's where the danger comes in, right? Because again, that retweet feature has turned into just this viral disease that spreads like wildfire, and it's scary. It's scary, but you bring up a really good point about, again, it's sort of piggybacking on what Jeannie said. It's about that comprehension component, right? It's about that understanding what it is that you're reading, and being raised by a teacher, that was beaten into me, not literally, figuratively speaking, when I was a kid. About I remembered after doing my homework, it's like, what did it mean? What did you just read? I would tell her what I read. It's like, what did it mean? Like, there's a line, and no, what did it mean? What are they trying to tell you? So I learned, I developed that muscle early on, and I'm so grateful for that. It was a pain in the ass. I hated it then, but I'm so grateful for it now.
Oh, ditto, man. Same. Yeah.
So what do you think? What do you think? Do you see that changing at all? Do you see people being willing to try to change their beliefs and their ways when it comes to getting information?
Oh, man. That's a super good question because who knows how we're going to communicate even. I mean, can you imagine that we would be doing this even like 15 years ago or when we were in high school? I mean, come on.
Hell no.
This is
My God.
shit.
I know. I remember payphones calling mom and dad, telling me going to be home late.
Yeah. Yeah. You got a quarter in your pocket? Oh, yeah.
I remember a dime.
Yeah. Sure.
Or like the party, or like you could stretch the phone cord across the kitchen and go into the private room so you could talk to your girlfriend without your parents knowing, or whatever that was. Yeah. Yep.
The very, very long cord. Yeah.
Very, very long cord. See, Gen X represent.
Yeah. So I can't stick around too long, but I think it's real important to go back and like look at even recent history. There's a couple of things that I just started listening to. I don't know if you're familiar with Bob Woodward's book Rage.
Oh, I read it. Yeah,
Uh,
it's
yeah.
incredible.
So, he just released the actual all 19 full length unedited conversations. It's called the Trump tapes. I think it's on
It's on
Audible.
Audible. Yep.
Listen, I know there's some MAGA people. There's what, 400 and some people here. Listen to the Trump tapes, people. It goes from, I think, October 2019 till August 2020. So COVID, the George Floyd BLM summer, with the backdrop of the election.
That's right.
And there's still, at one point, Woodward, like at the very end, toward like August, toward the end of their conversations, he's like, "Sir, what is your plan? What's your platform? Everyone I'm talking to wants to know what you're running on." "Oh, 4 weeks, I'm going to do immigration and healthcare and blah, 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 blah."
I know.
I mean, we saw that the entire presidency, and now it's 3 years later. There's still no plan. It's chaos. It's revenge, retribution. That's their platform.
And it has been for a while, quite frankly. Yep. But you're right. I mean, yeah, the Trump tapes are pretty eye opening, especially the parts about COVID and you're right. I mean, it tells us everything.
How he
But
speaks about people and about
right. Well, to our point, Chris, though, they've got to be a willingness, right? And that's the next step. It's the willingness to say. It's the willingness to read the indictments. It's the willingness to listen to the Trump tapes. It's the willingness to come out of your own echo chamber to realize that the information that you've been giving. We did a survey. I posted this the other night with a live. 71% of people surveyed, Trump voters in this particular poll, said that they believe the words that come out of Donald Trump's mouth. 71%.
I saw
More
that.
than their family, more than their
Yeah,
church.
more
Like,
than pastors, more than yeah.
exactly. It's
How,
like that.
how do you fight against that? I don't think you can. I think you just got to wait and hope that Gen Z and Alpha and the next generation coming up. I just don't. I mean, you've been doing these lives a long time. You've talked to people who are just completely never going to get it.
That's true.
And so have I, and so have we all.
Yeah, Anthony has a theory that there's nobody left that we can flip.
Yeah, yeah. But I mean, but even
Can
like
I
I'm hearing these people talk about, oh, Biden labeled half the country when he's terrorists or whatever, when he said MAGA or all blah blah blah. They actually think that MAGA is half the country.
I know.
And it's not. It's
I know.
it's maybe what, like 9 or 10 million people who are never going to get it.
maybe let me share a
Maybe.
statistic with you, Chris, because this is we started talking about this. And for you MAGA out there, this statistic comes from the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, which actually is a fantastic organization. So we don't need to beat up on that. Here we go. 130 Americans, approximately 54% of adults between ages of 16 and 74 years old, lack proficiency in literacy, essentially reading below the equivalent of a sixth grade level.
There you go.
130 out of 365 million.
130 million out of 365 million.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So this is why we can't reach anybody, because we really are. I would be willing to bet, and I'll put $100 on this. I don't know how we'd ever prove this, but I'll give $100 to charity, irregardless of this. I bet you of that 130 Americans, which represent 54 of adults between 16 and 74 years old, that a good 60 to 70% of that is MAGA.
That wouldn't surprise me.
Yeah.
That wouldn't surprise me. That goes back to the assault on education. I've asked this question before. When did it become a bad thing to be smart?
Or be able to think and read?
exactly.
Yeah, just the
Right?
basics.
Mhm.
And then but then you also got this Dunning-Kruger thing where they're so completely, confident in their complete ignorance.
Yeah.
Do your research. I'm like,
Yeah.
really?
Yeah.
Look it up.
Ugh,
Yeah.
Yep.
Look it up. I
Yep.
did my research. You do yours.
yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
at the end of the day, there has got to be. So back to the question I asked, I don't know if there's a change. I mean, I think the further away we move from Trump, I think the better off we know, the better off we're all going to be. But I think for the people that are sort of stuck, because I do think there are people that don't want to vote Democrat, that still want to vote Republican, and if they think Trump is the only choice, right? The further we move away from that, the more information that comes out. When we get convictions, because we will, you'll start to see. I think you'll start to see a bit of a shift, and then people will be like, did I miss something? Why all of a sudden is this guy being convicted? I was told he was innocent. I was told that there were no charges, or I was told that there was nothing to see here. So I think that's what it's going to take.
Yeah.
Accountability.
I,
Accountability.
I 100% agree with that. Yeah.
Yeah.
At least I would hope so.
Me
But
too.
I mean, there are still going to be a real hardcore group who are not going to care, and they're going to like him even more when he's a convict.
Probably true.
And
That's
and
probably true.
there's just no getting through to those people, man. There's just not. I
Yeah, I think you're right, brother. Well, thank you for joining, man. Good to see you.
yeah, yeah. Good to see
Appreciate
you.
you, Chris.
Thank you.
Be well, great. Be well, Graybeard. Take care, brother. Gen X represent. Love it.
Yeah. I mean, three
Um,
gray beards can't be wrong. There were three
no,
wise men.
of course. And again, I want to call this out in the chat because look, I'm not telling you that it's only my news sources are the ones that are correct. What I'm saying to you as a consumer of media, the responsibility falls to the individual to understand what it is that you're consuming. If you're getting your news from one source, whether it be right or left, if you're only getting your news from one source, you're then inherently biased to that particular source. Then, like for example, if you decide between NBC News and Fox, it's an easy test to determine which of those news agencies is presenting you with factual information. Now we know, so let's do the study. We just did this exercise for Fox. Let's do it for NBC. Let's do it for NBC just because out of curiosity, I think it's only fair that we look at what they get for a score.
Yeah.
So we ran it through the filter for Fox. Let's run it through the filter for NBC. Let's see what it says.
And it reminds me, I forgot. I said I was going to gift them, and I have not gifted them yet, so I'm going to gift them right now. As a
Okay.
matter of fact.
So we look at NBC News. They score high on factual reporting, left center bias, like we talked about. Overall, we rate NBC News left center biased based on story selection and word choices that moderately favor the left, and high for factual reporting due to proper sourcing and a reasonable fact checking record. High credibility is their overall score. So that's an example, right? Where again, they reference the bias because again, it does have a left bias, like we talked about earlier, how it's packaged, the words that they use, how what literally the complexion of their reporters are, but yet they
Right.
do their sourcing. They research it. Their journalists are credible. So,
Yep.
so I was just asked the question, Truth Social. Let's use Truth Social. Let's check that out.
Oof. Is that even media?
I'm not even sure what it's going to say. We'll find
Yeah. I
out.
wonder.
They don't even. It's not even listed here. They don't even have it.
Yeah.
They don't even have it. But that's
I
a
mean,
good question.
because I don't even know if we think about that critically. It's one man's op-ed,
Correct. It's a good way to look at
right?
it. Yeah.
So
Not biased at all. Philly Chica. Good evening.
Oh shoot.
Did you not want to request?
I am out in my oh my god, no, I'm very, very sorry.
No worries. I got you. Thank you, friend. Have a
Thank
good night. Sure thing. I love that. Those are always funny.
I know they're hilarious, and I love how people are always caught off guard. The best though the other night was the person sleeping. That was
Totally. That was
priceless.
hilarious. Good evening. I'm a watch. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
Doing
Um,
fine, thank you.
I'm
What's
going
on your
to
mind tonight?
talk about my. I'm going to talk about myself just for a minute, and I'll circle around back to the topic. But
Okay.
you were talking about literacy,
Hmm.
and I wanted to explain to you that my mother or father, neither one could read or write. My father had a third grade education, and he went to the military when he was 17, so he could write his name and he could write a little bit and count and do math, adding and subtracting. But my mother didn't go to school at all. She didn't even finish the first grade, and she
Wow.
was very much against education. And she
Interesting.
had 8 children. We were very, very poor, and they didn't believe in any kind of government assistance. My father always had a job. My mother couldn't work because she couldn't drive. She probably could have learned, but my father always drove, and she was kind of afraid to. But we had a garden. My mother and father both hunted, they fished. We lived, in the country. We had a storm cellar that had all of our things that she had canned, to we provided. My mother and father always provided for us. Um, there was some abuse because my mother was bipolar. I didn't know that at the time. There was a lot of bullying in school because we were the poorest family there. And so I know how mean people can be. Uh, but she didn't want us to learn because that meant we were going to grow up. She wanted us to just get married uh, to, to a man that worked and stay home and have kids and take care of him. That's what we were supposed to do,
Hmm.
you know. And so back to the literacy thing. I had attention deficit, I don't know, but they put me in a place for uh, a special ed class,
Hmm.
which at that time they put you in a place and you got cookies and Kool-Aid and they kept you away from the rest of the kids while they learned,
That's right.
you know.
That's right.
And so I left school when I was in 8th grade because I could work by then. I could work at this one place um, and vaccinating baby chickens.
What
And
about what about do you have kids yourself now?
no, I don't have children. And that
Okay.
goes back to I didn't want to further. I didn't. I didn't want to further that that life. And I know it's self hatred, but I saw my older sisters. They got pregnant when they were 16 years old, and they had abusive husbands, and and all the stuff that goes along with it. And I just couldn't stand the idea of getting married and being, treated like that. But I did leave home at an early age, and I lived in my car. Um, but I worked and got a hotel room on good days, that I
Hmm.
could afford. At that time, I could get a room in the town I lived in for like $16, for a
Oh,
night.
Wow.
And so but I lived like that for a while. But anyway, through that time, I didn't realize that I had mental problems.
Hmm.
But after a while, as I got older, uh, I got a GED and I started learning. And I
Good for you.
started realizing that I could learn. I was so nervous I couldn't even read. I couldn't go into the library. And and that's libraries used to be a lot. You couldn't just get online. You had
That's
to go
right.
look at the index cards
That's
and
right.
look up the
yeah.
book that you were looking for, know
Yeah, the old
who the
the old Dewey
writer
Decimal
was. You
System,
had to know
right?
what you wanted to read.
Right.
Right. And
Right.
when you're trying to learn on your own and don't have a teacher, when you mentioned that about your mother, when you don't have a teacher, I mean, you don't know where to go.
It's true.
A place that I was working, we had a lot of people from south of the border come to work, and they brought them in buses. And the church that was in our town, put them up in houses, and they also had um, classes for them to learn English, and they helped them get established. This was back, well, I'm from Arkansas, and this is when uh, Bill Clinton was the governor,
Okay.
and he and they had the system, you know, and they had green cards, and there wasn't all of this hoopla about it. I mean, it was helpful because we needed employees. You know, they needed employees there. These
Right.
people needed a job,
Right.
and everything was organized. But
And thinking back on that,
getting
I mean,
what I
there was
wanted.
no there. I was going to say, thinking back on that because you mentioned the fact that there were immigrants coming into our country and they were hardworking people and they cared about their community and then you worked together and you lived together and there was no threats to you or your family. Correct?
Absolutely. They were hardworking people and they loved their family. There
Sure.
was one boy from, um, oh, he wasn't from Mexico. It started with a G, but
Guatemala.
he would send, that's it, that's it. And he was so nice, but he told me that he could send half of his paycheck home to his mother and she could afford then to pay the rent on her house, you know, for the
Right.
whole month. And so he was saving up and he wanted to be able to bring her over, but you have to do it a little bit at a time. They can't just bring everybody, and so but it was organized the way that Bill Clinton had it in Arkansas. And they give Hillary Clinton and Bill Clinton a hard time. But if you look back to when they were governors, he was a governor and she was the first woman CEO of Walmart. And nobody can argue that Walmart's a pretty successful company, you know,
Yeah,
but they're
they are.
not best on labor laws, you
They
know.
definitely are not.
But
Exactly right.
but that was
Well,
also where I lived was when Walmart had the when he started out, when Sam Walton started, he only had the three stores, and um, he told everybody that if you buy stock and you work here for 20 years, by the end of the 20 years, you're going to have $1 million because of stock purchase plan. And it wasn't
right.
until after he died and his kids took over that they started being really chinchy about things and started uh, getting stuff made in China. And
Sure.
Bill Clinton also made a deal with a garment factory there, um, that Sam Walton would sell the products that were made in the U.S. in their stores if they would give this factory the work. And they did that for a little while, and then they needed more clothes than this factory could provide, and then they started getting the clothes from China.
Well,
So
you have a great
anyway,
story.
but it's
You have a great story to tell, and I'm really just by watching some of the comments in the chat. You have a lot of people that you've impressed with your story. So good for you for, obviously you grew up in a very difficult circumstance, and I'm sorry for that. But it seems like you really figured out the things that you wanted in life, and you went out and achieved it. And to get your GED after what you went through,
so
you should be incredibly proud of that.
getting back to your topic, and I promised you that I would, and I'll make it quick because I know
Okay,
I'm rattling.
it's all good.
But I watched CNN and learned a lot from CNN. I
Good.
can't read very well, but I can hear, I can
Sure.
listen,
Sure.
and I watched the History Channel and documentaries on history. And the one thing I was going to say too is that I read up on Ancestry.com
Yeah.
my family's history, and I saw on the census report where my mother lived when she was my age and growing up, and all of the death records and all the stuff and all the things that I understand now why she was so miserable.
That's great.
And I thought it was because of me, you know. But the CNN taught me to speak clearly. Didn't obviously didn't teach me to stay on some topic, but
No, you're
um,
fine. You're
it
You're
it
fine.
doing
taught me a
good.
lot.
You're doing great.
But when
Um,
I came to Louisiana, I mean, everybody watches Fox News, and it was the most racist, place that you could imagine, and that's where I live now. Everybody from uh, when Barack Obama was running for president, I mean, there were people came because I worked at the polls
Hmm.
at the elections, and there were men coming in, and they'd say, "We got to keep that N word out of the White House." You know, they
Hmm.
were just definite. They were going to keep Barack Obama out, and it was all crazy about the way that they were treating him.
Sure
And then
was.
when Donald Trump came up and started attacking Obama, then it's like then they went all over that, you know, and that's why Trump is so popular is because he attacked Barack Obama, and that's where the racism came in.
Right.
And I mean, it is clear as day when you
You're
live
right.
around racist people.
Yeah, it's true. I
But
mean,
that's
and
all I
that's
was going to say.
well, I appreciate that. Again, you have a very inspiring story. Thank you for sharing with it, and I'm honored that you felt comfortable enough sharing it on this platform with us. So thank you very much. Much
Well,
appreciated.
thank you. I watch you quite often. Thank you.
Thank you very much. You have
Thank
Bye.
a good
you.
night. Bye.
Oh,
Bye.
oh, let me just say one more thing. Can I just say
Sure.
one more thing?
Sure.
I don't have a gray beard, but I do have hairy legs, so maybe I can be part of the crowd.
You're
Nice.
honorary. Thanks a lot. We appreciate you.
Okay, thank you.
Goodbye. Bye. That's a
Hey,
great story.
real quick facts.
Yeah, brother.
You know, that brought up many things. And I think from a panel perspective, when we talk about panel topics, when we talk about migration, we had that great live where we talked about factual stuff. It would be interesting to kind of look at what Bill Clinton did in Arkansas, what other governors were doing at the time, what type of churches had housing and literacy programs for migrant workers, right? As a way to say, hey, one, the famous "What would Jesus do?"
Yeah.
Uh, and okay, Christians who are in mega. What is the difference between, say, what happened in the 80s and 90s versus what probably should be happening today? Like where in the Bible did a chapter and verse insert itself in which it instructed you to become who you've become, to become so spiteful, so hateful, so fearful, right? Why do you want to
Right.
other people? Because her story
Mm.
is so inspirational about how a child growing up in Arkansas at a time where women probably had absolutely no rights, despite what
None.
may have been on the books, right?
No, and no good role models.
No good role models. Yet, if you want to have, and I hate this expression, but it's the only one that comes to mind, if you want to have a pull yourself up from your bootstraps conversation, as a juxtaposition, let's listen to her story. Because
Yeah.
she didn't have boots or straps,
She didn't have anything.
right? And how does one go to a library to figure out what they want to read if you don't know the Dewey Decimal System or if you don't know how to use the card catalog? God forbid logging onto a computer and doing a search.
That's
Because
right.
if you can't write and you can't read, you can't type,
That's exactly right.
right? So
It just it
that
closes the door to so many things, you know? Yeah.
and and
It's
and
a good
and
point.
when you said closes the door to so many things, how many of the people that we try to reach have closed hearts and closed minds
Many. Too many.
and claim to be Christian, whatever the fuck that actually means? I don't know.
That's a really good point, Anthony.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. Um,
That was an awesome, inspiring, like thought-provoking little history lesson that we just went through because
I agree.
Bill Clinton did get in. I'm trying to find the article. There was something about when he tried to help Cuban immigrants too. Bill Clinton almost fucking got kicked out as governor or something. I remember there's being some kind of a
I
thing with him
remember
and
that
Jimmy
too.
Carter, right?
Yeah, there was like a collaborative of Southern Democratic governors or something like that, and they did
Yes.
a big human rights push. And I think you're right. I think it was Cuba. I think you're right about that. Yeah, it's interesting. It's
So
interesting.
I'm going to keep trying to
Okay, okay.
thread that together.
So just as a reminder, some folks that might have joined late. So I am in solidarity with Black creators on as sort of in support of Black History Month. There is a campaign that's going around TikTok that technically starts tomorrow. I wanted to get a jump start on it tonight. It's called hashtag CoinCot. So CoinCott. The idea behind it is that a lot of Black creators, and this is nothing new, a lot of their content gets suppressed. BIPOC, I should say, BIPOC in general. A lot of their content gets suppressed. TikTok makes some of their revenue on gifting. They take a percentage of gifting, which is one of the ways in which they make money. So, in solidarity of that, I've turned off gifting for the next week. So you won't be able to gift panelists or myself, which is I think I like the solidarity behind it. So that's why. So if people are curious as to why you're not able to gift panelists, that's the reason. So, so thank you for indulging me on that. I would appreciate if you would like and share the live though, so we can drive some more traffic. Would much appreciate that.
Yep. And our gift to you is right here.
Humbly speaking. where's
I was
where's your
also
well, I was
I
going to
was
say where's
also
your wife
voted.
tonight? I should ask her that question.
No, don't.
Um, so I just want to level set on a couple of different things. For those of you who are just joining. So what we're talking about is media literacy, and the reason that we wanted to talk about this topic is because obviously we know that we get inundated, slammed, overwhelmed with the amount of information that comes at us. Right? Information is power. Information used improperly and erroneously is dangerous. So we're trying to provide resources for people who might want to think about looking at the way in which they consume media perhaps differently. I'm not saying you should only get your news from a particular source. What I'm challenging you with is to think about where you get your news source. And I have a tool that I've used for a long time. It's called Media Bias Fact Check, and it's literally an agency. All they do is they compile stories and then they report out the accuracy of the information, and they give everybody, all entities, a scorecard. So we've done a couple tonight so far. We've done NBC, we've done CNN, we've done Fox, and we know that they vary in their bias, but we know that Fox scores very low on credibility, and then that should tell you, if you're a Fox viewer, that the information that you're getting is not considered credible. But yet we see it get parroted and pushed around quite a bit. Hi, Coley. It's good to see you again.
To see, I was gonna say the reason why literacy they like Fox News is they have a low reading level. HF and Project 2025, I grew up in that, and they keep them dumb, to put it nicely.
Mm.
And they want them to fall for the propaganda. And people don't understand that their life will be as bad as mine was for 21 years. And I barely escaped that by
I'm,
fleeing the country.
I'm sorry.
But
Yeah,
yeah,
I mean, you're
it's
right.
You're right. It's
intentional.
intentional.
You got a
That's
lot.
what
You got a lot of feedback. Sorry, I just muted you for a second, Coley. Hopefully, you can unmute now. Maybe that'll change it. You can try to unmute, see if that fixed it. Coley, you can try to unmute if you'd like, or request again. I'm going to drop you down into the chat, Coley, and you can request again. You had a lot of feedback on your mic. You can feel free to request again. TikTok's been glitching the past couple of days. I noticed that. Hey, Dave.
Hello, hello, hello. I am here stuck in the office for about 2 hours until I go pick up my kid from rehearsal. So I figured I saw you up. I figured I'd say hi to you and to Anthony and to everybody. What's the topic for the evening?
Well, first, what are they rehearsing for?
Oh, my daughter's she's in an art school. She's rehearsing a play.
Awesome. That's great. We're
Yeah.
talking media literacy, Dave, and we
Oh,
know from the conversation.
God.
Yeah, it's a topic that's near and dear to me professionally, also personally. I
Yeah.
just think there's so many opportunities here to kind of change the way in which people consume information. So that's what we're talking about. So
I,
so
no.
what's your go-to news source, Dave?
My go-to news source.
Hmm.
Let's see. Truthfully, I don't have one.
Okay.
As information comes across my screen, I look at it, and then if it seems weird or silly or stupid, I double check and triple check it
Me too.
usually, and I usually my double checks are usually go NBC to ABC to AP, NPR. I try to stay away from the ones that have an obvious bias and a known bias. Obviously, I stay the hell away from the Foxes, etc. Even though they do report facts, if you stay away from their editorial nonsense, they do have actual facts in there some places.
I'm glad you said that.
Um,
Like Fox Business, there are elements to the
yeah.
Fox News empire. And what's his name? Brett Baer. Brett Baer is a
Mhm.
pretty well respected journalist, and he does a pretty decent job providing information. So again, not everyone. Are you opening like a Reese's or like a Snickers? Stop
Oh
whatever
Bro,
it is that you're
my
doing.
oh, okay.
Okay.
My camera. I didn't think you'd be able to pick it up. I have headphones on. I didn't think you'd be
Oh,
able to pick it
we
up.
got it loud and clear.
Damn. Okay.
No, but you're right. So your list is about the list that I use as well. And I'm just again, I grew up watching those kinds of things and
Hmm.
listening to those kinds of things. And I was saying earlier about my mom was a teacher, and I was a consumer of op-eds when I was a kid.
Me
And I
too.
think people have to understand, the difference between an editorial, because an editorial, by definition, is an opinion piece. It's somebody saying, "I'm going to provide an opinion on something," and if you were to take that as fact, that can be dangerous. Now,
I had this conversation with you more than
yeah,
once about the fact
exactly.
that people do not they have forgotten what media is. They've forgotten that there's a huge difference between editorial content and news content. And you have places like Fox, to a lesser extent MSNBC, that mix up editorial content and news content purposely to sway opinion. I remember when I was in school, when I and this is the 80s, probably junior high school is when they started teaching us critical thinking, media literacy, understanding the difference between editorial content and news content. They would have us read fucking newspapers just to explain to us, look, here's a story about an event that happened. And then here's somebody talking about that event, about what they think about that event.
Right.
Which one is the one which is giving you the facts? Pretty simple. That is not around anymore. Interestingly enough, it was around when a lot of the consumers of Fox News, because they tend to skew older, when they were around, they were getting educated at the same time or before I was getting educated. So I don't know if my education in the New York City public school system is so much better than the education that other people in public school systems got. Because it seems to me that people my age, your age, and older can't discern editorial content from news content.
Mm.
I mean, do you
Well,
notice that?
I do notice that, like we talked about earlier. I think Anthony broke down some stats about how the average reading level of Americans is like sixth grade.
Oh, that hurts
And
my
I think,
brain, but yeah, I've
yeah,
seen that
and to
stat.
and to be honest, that has not shifted very much over the years. It really hasn't.
yeah.
I think the opportunity that we have there to obvious for I know you guys will probably agree with this statement, is that because we've underfunded education for so long, that they're related, obviously. And I think the dangerous part to that is that we hear a lot of the rhetoric coming from the right regarding education, people who may not have achieved very far in their education. I want to be very clear. I'm not equating education with intelligence. They are
I
often
am.
related. Okay, but
I am.
they are often related. I'm just saying I don't want to disparage somebody just because they didn't go to college doesn't mean that they're not smart. I'm
True.
trying to follow my logic here. So the problem is that people who disparage education may not have achieved a level of education that would give them the ability to homeschool their kids, for example. And that's that
Yes.
cycle that we run on, right? Like
Yes.
I can do a better job because teachers are woke, there's litter boxes in classes. I didn't get past the seventh grade, but I can do a better job teaching my kids.
and I believe everything people tell me.
Exactly.
How about this? People who went to college are generally more informed than people who didn't go to college.
Totally
Doesn't
agree.
mean that they're smarter or dumber, but, and actually in the modern world, in today's world where college education is available to almost everyone with student loans, etc.
Yep.
I can say that because there's the universal availability. Even if you're going to, like, you don't have to go to Harvard.
Yep.
You don't have to go to NYU. You have to go. We're talking about local, local 4-year school, local 2-year school. If you don't want to do that, if you don't want to take the time to give yourself that much education, to give yourselves kind of the basics of education, I'm not going to, unless you truly were not able to, and I know a few people who weren't because of the circumstances of their life.
Sure.
But if that is a choice that you make, I am going to look down on you. I'm going to look down on you not because you're dumb necessarily, but you obviously you've chosen not to have the curiosity to learn more about your world.
Yeah, I mean, I look at it differently. I look at it as, college is not for everyone, especially in this day and age. Especially in this day and age, the issue that I have with it, and I've said this before, I think you and I got to talk about this, Dave. It's like when did being smart become a bad thing? Like, I'm proud of my education, right? Right.
It's always been a bad thing.
True, but I mean, in particular now, it's just really now, and maybe it's because of the way in which we communicate. The way I've been called, I'm called a woke liberal because I went to college. They don't want their kids to go to college because they don't want to be indoctrinated. Colleges, by definition, are liberal, just because you're exposed to so many different types of people.
Yes. Reality is a liberal bias. Reality is a liberal bias.
Well said.
Here's the
exactly
thing.
Right.
It's not an original thought. I heard it somewhere. But here's the thing. If you look at American history, specifically American history, world history too, but American history specifically, you will see that there is an ebb and flow of intellectualism and then anti-intellectualism. Okay? We had something called the Know Nothing Party for a bit of time. Okay? We've had the whole idea of, those smart aleck college kids. But then at the same time, right before that, you had the 1950s when NASA and scientific achievement was widely considered to be the best thing that you could do because we had an enemy with the Soviets. They were our enemy. And we had to beat them in everything, including intellectual achievement, including scientific achievement. Right? So it ebbs and it flows. And right now, we're in the ebb. We're in the bottom. We're there where you have, unfortunately, this large-ish political group, this is the Republicans, specifically MAGA, who have a vested interest in keeping people stupid. And they do. If people are not educated, they will listen to any stupid fucking thing that you have to tell them. Okay? There's a reason why Donald Trump said, and I think it was in 2016, maybe it was 2020, but it might have been in his 2016 campaign, that he loves the undereducated. Remember that quote?
The poorly educated, yeah.
The poorly educated, that was it. He loves them. Why? Because they're easy to grift off of.
I look at it a little bit differently. Like, I don't, yes, I believe that there are things that you can certainly gain and benefit from higher education, but I don't always equate intelligence with education. I think it has to do with experience. I mean, I know plenty of people that I went to college with that are a lot less intelligent than friends of mine who didn't.
I agree with you.
I think it's about what you want to do in life and how you want to do it in life. Your willingness to learn new things, to me, it requires a level of intelligence to want to engage.
Let's reframe this a little bit. Maybe I misspoke. Because I know plenty of incredibly intelligent people who did not go to college because of circumstances of their lives.
Exactly, circumstances, exactly.
But I'll say this. While I'm not going to take back my statement about the anti-intellectualist kind of vein in American history. What I am going to say is
Fair,
this.
fair.
Right now, there is an incredible war on expertise.
Hmm.
Okay? I don't need to listen to those highfalutin virologists and immunologists. I know the vaccine's bad for me. I don't got to listen to that lawyer who tells me all those confusing things about Ray Ipsiloquiter and all that shit. I know Trump is innocent. I don't got to read nothing. I know and it's in almost every single kind of in almost every single vein. I don't have to listen to those whatever. I mean, what do you call them? To those archaeologists. I know that the Earth is 6,000 years old because I believe.
Good point. Yeah, I do my own research. Yes, thank you, Jay.
Exactly. I do my own research crowd.
Yeah.
No,
that's a fair point. That's a fair point. Again, this conversation, although it does involve critical thinking, and Anthony and I were talking about this earlier about how there's no really critical thinking class. You're taught how to critical think by analysis.
There used to be. I had a class in it was called critical thinking. I remember it. It was a soft cover book. It was green. It had critical thinking in white letters on a green background.
Good for you. I didn't have that. We were just taught how to do it.
But New York is a cesspool. Everybody's stupid, right?
Well,
New York City's.
We were given the exercise that you went through, like, break down this newspaper story, or given the same story from two different sources, and how do you determine which one is real and which one is not? What's an editorial piece? What's an opinion piece? What's factual journalism? And that's when I knew that I wanted to go into media, because I'm like, this shit's awesome. I love trying to investigate this and figure it out and put two and two together. And then, I always wanted to kind of create my own little. I used to run the newspaper in high school, and that's kind of where the whole thing started. So. Anyway, but
I got a comment here.
Hold on,
Dave.
Anthony wanted to say something.
Sorry, Anthony.
Let me share a sweet piece of irony. So, from the late 30s up until probably the mid 80s, the United States government would specifically free scientific, mathematical, and engineering minds and extract them from countries all over the world so that they would come to the United States. So that's one. Another delicious piece of irony that these MAGA idiots always forget when talking when talking about America's greatness. The United States military had been utilizing these scientific, mathematical, and engineering minds from around the world to teach at the academies. So a lot of these professors, and they were all PhDs and multiple PhDs, also taught military leaders about all sorts of things, right? So when we talk about woke, America literally has been woke since the late 30s and has never ceased to be woke. The manner in which we become woke is the irony. We literally went out and plucked people from other countries, mostly to set some of them free in the Eastern Bloc nations, right? But our modern age, our advancement in military technology, our advancement in manufacturing is only because the rest of the world had all the fucking smart people in the room that we couldn't fill.
That's right.
Because our education system from the 30s up until the 60s was shit, right? Last point I'll make, I'm going to use a personal example. My father was kicked out of high school. My father got a GED when he was in the Navy. My father can do a calculus problem backwards in pen.
Wow.
There is no direct correlation between education and intelligence. It's never been proven. It never will be proven, because the fact of the matter is people with my father's intelligence make up less than, I think it's like 0.001% of the world's population. So people like my dad exist, people who never went to school, people who are literally so incredibly fucking brilliant that they do the New York crossword puzzle in like 15 minutes with an ink utensil because they don't need a pencil,
Yeah,
right?
I know people
It's
like that.
because my dad has spent a lifetime reading, and that is the differentiator. It's not necessarily that you went to school, it's that your brain possesses a natural intellectual curiosity that propels you forward, right?
Agreed.
And my dad won't talk about it, he won't brag about it, but he's a fucking literal genius,
Yeah,
right? And it's pretty fucking cool, right?
I agree.
And a lot of us got to go. Listen, I was poor. I did not have money. I got to go to a really good prep school, high school, right? I got to go in the summers. I had to work at the school to help pay for tuition,
Hmm.
right? But yes, I got to go to a prep school, right? It didn't make me smart, right? I was probably the dumbest smart kid in that school, right? It's like my friends that went to MIT, I always laugh with them. I'm like, what's it like to just be another smart kid, right? So, I just want us to be careful about how we equate intelligent, learned behavior, learning,
I
because ultimately there are a lot of people not only that don't have access to college for various reasons, but more importantly, the GOP wants to remove the one thing that can lift people out of poverty, and that's the goddamn library,
exactly right.
right? So
That's exactly
anyway,
right. I appreciate that. Dave,
gently steps off his soapbox.
I'm gonna drop you down, Dave, because I want to try to bring some more people up. We're trying something new, not to have too many people on the panel. So, but I appreciate your time, brother, as always. We will talk to you again. Thanks, man.
Oh shit, what did I just do?
Nothing.
No, I thought I literally just disconnected.
No, you didn't. You're good. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Gays for the propaganda of homosexuality among teenagers is not enough. They should be prohibited from.
What?
Like, why would somebody wait all that time and then come up and do that stupid ass shit? Like, it makes no sense to me. Like, literally, just ridiculous fools. Hey, Clue, how you doing, brother? Oh man,
Hey, how you guys doing?
we're well. How are you?
I want to say I agree with Anthony. I'm doing great. I want to say I agree with Anthony. Because look at all the Ivy League dipshits that we have in the Republican Party who were able to afford to go to great schools. They were able to go to great schools and, gain the eye-opening liberal intelligence and be exposed to all kinds of things, and they still believe that the fat orange turd should be the leader of the free world. That pretty much sums up what Anthony was saying. It doesn't have anything to do with education. There's brilliant people out there, and reading is probably the best thing. I know my daughter, man, when she was young, she got into reading, and my son was playing video games, and she was reading. And her IQ is, from that is straight up higher than his. He was getting
Yeah.
dumber by the game, and she was getting smarter by the book.
No, I agree. I mean, you think about Ted Cruz, you think about DeSantis, you think about numerous senators and members of Congress. Elise Stefanik has a Harvard education, so you're right. And I think there's no excuse for their willful ignorance, we'll call it. But yeah, I agree. I don't think. I mean, I understood Dave's point, but I think the ultimate. I think it's whether it be reading or just being exposed to other ideas or opinions. That's how you grow. That's how the synapses in your brain fire. New experiences, new relationships, new friends, new environments, all those kinds of things. I mean, if you're not learning in life, you're dying. So I don't know how else to say it other than that.
Facts.
Yeah.
No lies detected from either
That
one
would
of you.
help a lot of Americans is if they, right, if Americans could venture outside of America for a little bit. I think my greatest education came from going to foreign countries and learning how the rest of the world lives and operates, and realizing that not everybody that is an American wants to be an American.
That's right. That's right. The idea that, we've talked about
I'm
this
not coming
before.
in, am I?
No, you're breaking up, brother. You're really breaking up. So I'm gonna drop you down, Kalu. Request again, okay? I understood his point though, and I think
Yeah.
this is a good exercise because I've been fortunate, like you. I've been fortunate that I've had not as many opportunities around the world as you have based on your job at the time, but I've traveled a lot. Done most of it by myself. I don't have brothers and sisters. I just did a lot of. I sort of had that wanderlust when I was a kid, and he's right. So I would encourage everybody, if you have the means to do it, even if it's not outside of the country, just go to other parts of our country and just go to see what other people are experiencing and how other people are living. All liberals aren't bad. All conservatives aren't bad. We just have to find a way for
Yeah.
people to understand that the hatred that comes from certain elements of our society is not it's not the majority of America. It's the overwhelming minority, as a matter
Yep.
of fact. And
Yep.
the assault on education and the assault on freedoms and the assault on rights, all those kinds
Yeah.
of things, I think is rooted in lack of understanding. Certainly a lack of empathy, because you can't gain empathy towards someone else if you don't have an understanding of what they're going through. And that
Yeah.
requires the ability to think critically. And that requires the ability to understand someone's circumstance. Where I struggle is when people use their own particular lot in life to attack others, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
Whatever it might be.
Yeah.
We know the situation at the border is a big lie. We know it. We know we're
Well,
not being invaded. We know that
yes.
we're not under attack. We know it's just part of that fear mongering that the right has to use now, because they can't talk about inflation, they can't talk about gas prices, they can't talk about the economy, because those are all trending in the right direction. And it's dangerous, folks. It's
Yeah.
dangerous, and this fits the media literacy conversation we're having this evening, because depending on where you get your news, you're going to be told, what did I say it was earlier? A caravan of illegal migrants invading our country.
Right.
No,
Right.
no.
Every day there's a creator here on TikTok, and I cannot for the life of me remember her name. I was just trying to write it, but I can't think of it. I think on a daily basis she's driving the Eagle Park area where they say people are coming through, and yes, there is a natural opening at
Yep.
the fence, and there's a private property sign because that's going to stop people.
Right.
But every time she's driven there, and her and her dog get out and walk around, there's like no one there, right? Not even the National Guard is at that opening. So
That's
yeah.
right.
Oh, and she shows all the open fences. Yeah. Who is it? Who is it that does that? Does anybody know that creator's name? Because we should shout that person out, because every day it's like, hey, look at this horrible invasion of a bunch of National Guardsmen standing around at their pickup trucks, picking their noses, right?
I feel like it's April. It might be April. April
Okay.
Inc. It might be April Inc. I think it might be her. Because I think she has some guests come up and she talks about it that way, and she literally has videos. And I know T Drinker went down to Eagle Pass, and he
Yes.
drove the border. Again, that topic, as we know, it's become so divisive, but it's an
Yep.
example of exactly what we're talking about here. So Anthony and I did some math last night, right? We did that breakdown. We talked about, we said, if we use 300,000, or what the number was for December, multiply that over a course of a full year, what did we come up with? It was like 3.6 million people coming into our
Yeah.
country, and a
Yeah.
population of 350 million people. It's like
Right. It's
1%,
1%.
1%,
And how many
1%.
people expire from our population on an annual basis? Do the math. You need
Yeah,
people coming in to replace the people that are going out, just to
yeah.
keep it even,
Exactly
right?
right. And that's an example of some of the media, sort of the misinformation that we got to deal with. And a lot of it comes from people's unwillingness to investigate, laying on in the comfortable space of your confirmation bias, which is just really, really dangerous. It's just dangerous. Now, again, you can have an opinion on a topic. There's
Yeah.
nothing wrong with that. And we can debate those kinds of things, but to be able to have a conversation that's rooted in fact is absolutely critical. It's
Yep.
just critical. And the example you gave with China, right? We're about the same land size, right? More or
Yeah.
less, more or
Yeah.
less. And they have 1.4 billion,
Yes.
and people are leaving China, and they're freaked out. They wish they had an immigration issue because people are
Right.
leaving that country.
Right. Right. Yeah. It's really truly funny. And you know, the crisis at the border started in 1952 when they wrote the INA. So maybe we should just
Exactly right.
get in our George Jetson car and go back to 1952 and fix it.
And I was thinking about this today. I'm not going to shift necessarily to the border topic, but so many people that we hear from the right, they want people to be told, they want the big gate to close, and they don't want anybody coming in. They want them stopped at the border. The question I have for people who think that, like, what are they supposed to do? Because not everybody that's crossing the border is from Mexico. They're from other countries. So are you asking Mexico to take everybody? Because Mexico's not going to do that. You've got people we now know that there are, I was reading about this today, and I want to get this statement right, that there are more apprehensions of people on the global terror watch list crossing the northern border than there are the southern border.
Oh yeah.
So, with that
Yeah.
being said, back to my original question, people crossing the southern border, if we close the gate and tell nobody that they can come in, people from Guatemala, Venezuela, Nicaragua, where are they supposed to go? Where are they supposed to go? So,
Yeah.
I know the Biden administration is working with Mexico to try to create some scenarios that we can do this. And again, we're not going to spend all night on it, but this is an example of that misinformation and why people need to really look beyond the headline, because there is no invasion and there is no crisis and there's no state of emergency. It's nonsense.
Yep.
Nonsense. So just to kind of shift gears again, we're talking about some of the headlines. I want to bring this up because I think it's important. Um, we talked earlier on about the headlines that are intentionally there to draw people in. Some, for example, are Democrats push for post-birth abortion. They don't happen. Woke ideologies means litter boxes in schools. These are real headlines, okay? Smoking gun bank statement sink China Joe. Woke prosecutors interfering in Trump's path to presidency. Speaker Johnson releases all in caps, January 6th footage. And schools in New York closed for students but open for migrants. Again, those are emotionally driven headlines intended to elicit a particular response, and they do their job because people will respond to them. And you often hear those headlines then parroted and or repeated not only in TikTok lives, but on various social media channels, spread through X and or Twitter, whatever the hell you want to call it. That's the reality of the circumstance. So I don't see a lot of traffic from our friends on the right. So people on the right, MAGA, I see a lot of you squawking in the chat. So would you guys consider yourselves media literate? Do you have a system to fact check? Or do you just parrot headlines? Because I'm trying to provide some information here. Does anybody have a news source that they would like me to vet for them? Is there one that you go to regularly? Let's do another one. I'll just pick one that I use. I use the Associated Press. And I think that this is give you an example. So the Associated Press is least biased. They're more or less right down the middle on their score. Very high factually. We rate the Associated Press as left-centered bias due to left-leaning editorializing of news stories and frequently conducting fact checks on conservatives. We also rate them very high for factual reporting due to proper sourcing and a reasonable fact check record. Let's use the New York Post, for example, because that's a Murdoch-owned property. It used to be labeled a tabloid. It sort of falls into that category a little bit now. Right center, mixed factually. Overall, we rate the New York Post on the far end of right center biased due to story selection that typically favors the right, and borderline questionability of sources, medium to low credibility. So again, this is not me trying to tell you that all of your news sources are trash. Sadly, a lot of them are. I guess I should rephrase that. If you like trash, then those news sources are good for you. I prefer the truth. I prefer facts. I prefer data that I can verify and double check.
Yeah.
So who's doing the scoring? So the scoring is done, Josh. The scoring is done on this website called Media Bias Fact Check. It's self-funded, reader-supported, fact-driven, exclusive content. It's made up of hundreds of people who do this for a living. That's their job. They rate news agencies. They read their stories. They score them based on facts. They cross-check it. They double cross-check it. I've been using this for a long time, and I've never had a source that I've used for credibility using this filter to have it blow up in my face. In my professional career and those of my clients depend on my accuracy. So that's why it's important.
How does the BBC rate? I always wondered. Would they consider the BBC?
Yeah, they should be on here.
I'm just asking because it's one of my favorite things to read.
Yeah, very high factual, left center bias based on story selection that slightly favors the left. We also rate them high for factual reporting due to proper sourcing of information. And that's the key line. High factual for proper sourcing of information. And they very rarely fail fact checks. High credibility.
Cool.
Yeah, I mean, and we can also, there's another one in here that people, when I say it freaks people out, but Al Jazeera?
No, there's some fabulous writing over there. Are you kidding me?
Yep, exactly. Exactly. They have an English version. They're left leaning. Overall, we rate them left center bias based on story selection. Mixed for factual reporting due to some failed fact checks. Overall, we rate them medium to high credibility. So, again, this is a tool. Don't have to, you don't have to use it. But again, like we talked about earlier, it has to be a willingness. It's got to be a willingness to understand that you want to know if you're consuming the truth. NPR, very high factual, left center biased, leans slightly left, but scores very high for factual reporting due to thorough sourcing and accurate news reporting. That's NPR.
Yeah.
So, yeah, Reuters, that's another one that scores extremely high. So,
plus with NPR, you get access to Wait, Don't Tell Me.
That is true. It used to be, and Car Talk used to be on that show years ago.
Cats, oh my God, click and clack.
Exactly. Hey, Fax, how are you?
How about you?
Doing fine, thank you. What's on your mind?
I figured I'd change my picture to the McDonald's Messiah for you.
There you go. There you go.
That's Trump's new name. We're talking about media facts and media literacy and stuff. I want to go back to the first Trump Hillary bout when he was elected. I remember I wasn't on TikTok at all. I was on Facebook, and I remember a bunch of people posting memes, and I remember calling them out and going, "Listen, no, Obama is not shaking the hand of Osama bin Laden. It's the Pope." And all they did was put his picture on it. Like, nobody ever, fucking dog. Nobody ever fact checks. It's crazy. It's not a hard concept. It takes 5 seconds to do a Google search. You can actually Google that picture that they have in the meme, and it'll tell you the metadata. It's not hard. And these Republicans always do their research by looking at Facebook memes or TikTok memes at this point. Oh, I saw it on a meme, so it has to be real. There is no meme that's real. They're all handmade and they're all biased. I make
it's true. It's true. Like, a good example of that would be if you go to a MAGA Live, which I do, so you don't have to. If you go there and you'll see people who will be talking about something that they saw on Facebook. And that confirmation bias then goes around like wildfire. All 9 people on the panel are all chomping at the bit because, yep, we got them. I saw that too. Exactly to your point. And I'm just in the comments. I'm like, are you freaking kidding me? It took me 10 seconds and I could dispel that. And then I comment on it and then they boot me from the live. So that's what happens.
It's crazy. I used to call out the people because, like I've told you before, I live in a very Republican area, very Trump area. And so I have a lot of people in my neighborhood or, county, let's say, because I'm in farmland now, that are right-leaning. And I would call them out and go, listen, just research this. It's fake. And then they would go, no, it's real, or I don't need to research it. I'm posting it anyway. I'm like, you're posting fake information. And I don't understand how people don't realize when we talk about Russia and how they helped the election, it's not like they went in and changed the votes. It's that they went in to memes on Facebook and changed your ideas. They can't
Exactly.
get that concept. They didn't go into the voting machines. It wasn't election fraud. It was them changing your mind because you're small-minded.
That's right. Election interference based on media manipulation. No doubt about it.
Right. And they
Yep.
don't
Yep.
get that. Like, you can't explain that to these people at all.
No, no, because it doesn't fit. It doesn't fit the narrative, Chris. That's the problem.
That's a good point.
It just doesn't fit, and that's the bigger issue more than anything else, right? I mean, we talk about willful ignorance, and I think that's dangerous, but it's the confirmation bias that sort of supports that narrative. So people are unwilling to look past that. I mean, how many conversations have we had, Anthony, with people when they're saying that they provide us information that we know is completely wrong? We'll literally pull up the one we had just recently with the National Guard. So we went through the command and control structure for the National Guard, and I'm reading it from the National Guard's website. I'm reading it and I'm like, I don't see anywhere in here is the Speaker of the House. And their response was, well, Nancy Pelosi did it. I'm like,
Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
Like, so that is an example of when you have that bias and that narrative in your head, then it doesn't matter. That's Dunning-Kruger. It doesn't matter what the truth is. It just doesn't.
I don't know
Yeah.
how we got to this section. I remember back in the day, and look at Men in Black 1, when they went to the dirt sheets to find the alien. And that was comedy.
Right.
Like, that's where we're at right now. The Inquirer and all those other ones are so much more tame than what is posted now and people believe.
We need the zapper that they had in Men in Black. We need that, and then we all need the glasses to put on, and we need to zap everybody back to reality so they can forget about the last 8 years.
Valid.
If only.
That's true. I agree. I'd
Yeah.
love to forget about the last 8 years.
Yeah, many of us would. Thank you, brother. Appreciate you. Good perspective, as always.
All right. I'll talk to you
Later, man. Be well.
Bye-bye.
Yeah, I mean the Facebook thing, that's a crazy one to me. So Facebook, YouTube, those things in and of themselves are not sources. They
Right.
are not a source. It
Right.
is an avenue to consume information. So I've had enough conversation with people when I say, where did you get that information? Like Facebook. I'm like, well, Facebook's not a source. And then their response is, why? Because you don't like it? I'm like,
Yeah.
no,
No.
because it's not a source. The
Right.
source would be this, like the source of there's a river that runs behind me. The source of it is Lake Champlain. That's the source of that river. That's
Yes.
where it starts.
Yes.
The
Yes.
river is not the source. The river is there, but it's not the source. It's probably a bad analogy, but actually it's probably a good one. Anyway, so
Yeah.
yeah, look, I wonder if YouTube scores on this thing. I don't think it will because of the way that this is built, but I'm curious. I'm going to see if it scores it. It probably won't because of the type of media that it is, because it's not
Yeah.
even media technically.
Well,
No,
right.
it's not here. No, it's not here. It doesn't even show. Let's look up. Let's do Newsmax while we're here.
Yeah. Good luck with that one.
Okay. So there's a graph that they use. It's an arrow, and Newsmax is to the as far right as you can go, extreme right, low factual. So conspiracy theories, pseudoscience, propaganda, fake news, failed fact checks. We rate Newsmax right biased and questionable based on the promotion of conspiracy theories, pseudoscience, as well as numerous failed fact checks, low credibility. So again, take that information and do with it what you will, but that's the reality of the circumstance. And we run into it all the time when people get their news. I've started to notice a bit of a trend, and Anthony, I wonder if you notice this as well. When you ask people where they get their information, it's almost like they're deflecting away from it, or when they say, well, Fox, they almost say it like apologetically.
Yeah. Yeah.
Or, well, I saw it on Newsmax. Although the people that say Newsmax say it with full chest. Newsmax.
Yeah. Yeah.
again, it's dangerous, folks. It's just really, really dangerous. And if there's anything that you can learn from our conversation this evening, is that there are ways to get information. No one is trying to pull the wool over your eyes. It's not a gotcha moment. It's literally just an opportunity to get information and to get it right.
Right.
That's the goal.
Right.
That's the goal.
Yep.
If you can question something that we talk about by providing a source that disputes what we're saying, then go for it. I would love to have that happen. Absolutely, go for it.
I accept that challenge.
Totally. Let's go. And I would be like, you proved us wrong. Thank you for doing that.
Yeah.
That's
the very first person that proves us wrong, I will send you a $25 DoorDash gift card.
That's awesome. Again, we're not saying that to be condescending, but the point is that we've got the facts on our side because we care about this kind of shit. I have a question. So I have a question from the chat. So somebody asked, it's mediabiasedfactcheck.com. That's what it is. Mediabiasedfactcheck.com.
Yeah. And the reason why I'm offering it is because part of humility is admitting when you're wrong, right? And I would like to reward somebody.
Yeah.
Because we make challenges, and I think as a just reward, $25 should get somebody probably lunch and a tip via DoorDash in most places. Definitely a lunch. And I'm willing to make that challenge. Presupposing you have DoorDash where you live. If you don't and you win, I will figure out how to PayPal you $25, right?
So I live in rural Vermont. I have to dash to the store when I get hungry.
You are the DoorDash.
I am the walking, talking DoorDash. Yes, that would be me. Somebody asked about Business Insider. So they are mostly factual. They lean left. So their score is overall, we rate Business Insider left center bias based on story selection that leans left. We also rate them as mostly factual in reporting rather than high due to an occasional use of poor sources and one failed fact check out of 100. High credibility. So
that's pretty good. 1 out of 100. That's, I mean,
pretty good.
Yeah, just from a human error perspective, that's pretty damn good.
Yeah.
Right? I mean,
yeah. So that's a good source. Thank you for asking that, Francis. Yep. Breitbart. Oh, that'll be fun.
Is Breitbart media or again a one man's?
Let's see. Well, Breitbart News. It does give us a source. It does give us a score. Holy moly! It's in its own category. It's all the way to the right at extreme. Extreme right propaganda, conspiracy, failed fact checks. Overall, we rate Breitbart highly questionable based on extreme right-wing bias, the publication of conspiracy theories and propaganda, as well as numerous failed false claims, low credibility. So again, another example. So I think what I hope people have identified tonight that we're talking about is that a lot of the news that is on the right, okay, doesn't score well when it comes to factual reporting. And that is intentional.
Yes.
That is intentional because the right, and it's a smart business move, okay? The right has identified that their viewers/readers will glom onto a headline and not bother doing the research behind it. That's the difference. Exactly, Billy. That's the fear-mongering. That's why they do it. That's why those headlines that I read earlier are so effective, because it draws people in. It's the ultimate clickbait. And they do it intentionally. Because let's be real, news in and of itself is boring. And you want it to be that way. What the right wants and what right-wing mainstream media wants is they want the sensational factor. They want the oh shit factor. There's a caravan invasion of illegals at the border. Democrats are pushing post-birth abortions. Damn those Democrats. That's what they want. They want you to react emotionally to that headline. That's why they do it.
Yep. Hey, by the way, I sent you the news article about Clinton, and it was all in regard to the Mariel boat lift effort.
Oh, okay.
So, but interesting,
Yeah. Okay. I'll check it
right?
out.
Yeah, it's. Here's what's funny. Here are the participants of that boat lift: the government of Costa Rica, the government of Cuba, the government of Peru, the government of the United States, people from Cuba, people from Haiti. Outcome: around 125,000 Cubans and 25,000 Haitians arrive in the United States with
Wow.
presidential approval.
Wow.
Shocking.
That's
It's
crazy. I do
it's
remember that now. I do remember that
yeah.
now. Did it say
Yeah,
in there that there was like a consortium of Southern governors that did that, or?
that's I remember that too, and it's like there's the problem is some of the sources I don't subscribe I don't subscribe to.
Sure.
So like you can only
Paywall.
get like half a paragraph for free.
Come on,
But I'm
you're like a finance guy. Can't you hack that shit? Come on, get that done, man. Let's go.
just because I have smart people working for me doesn't mean they will be allowed to do any nefarious
Uh,
activities.
Damn it. That's why I have 20-year-old children.
Listen, one of my jobs is as a chief risk officer for a blockchain company. So
Ooh,
it's kind
yeah.
of right there in my title.
Forget I said that. Never
Right.
mind. I'll be like,
I'm such a party pooper.
I'll reach out to my middle son, and I'll be like, do you have the password for Netflix or whatever? He'll be like, no, but I know like six or seven. So what do you want for a profile? I shouldn't
Hey,
say that. I mean, I'm kidding. I'm just kidding.
you're
Totally
totally
kidding.
joking.
Yeah.
Hold on. Come here. You can't. Hold on. Somebody wants to say hi because she should say hi.
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 Hello, Queen. Good evening. How are you
Look
tonight?
really nice with those, with that khakis. Yeah.
Khakis would look very nice with that, I think. I think khakis
Wait
would
a
look
minute.
very nice with that.
These are nicer. Try those
I think
on. Just love.
I think I agree. Those are nicer. I like those better too.
Oh, here's another one.
I like that one. That's my favorite.
Oh, you
That's
have
what I want.
these. These would be perfect summer
I
ones
totally agree.
with the
Those are the
palm
best
tree.
ones.
Yep. This is
Yep.
perfect.
Totally agree.
Yep, that's
Yep.
good. It's a nice It's a nice little uniform. Oh my God, that's so perfect, Bugger.
So perfect.
You look so summery.
Yeah. When I think of my outfits, I like to think in seasonality. And
It's so funny. I don't think she realized. Obviously, she didn't realize her mic was on.
I know.
Queen, I don't think you realize. I just gave you the invite to unmute your mic. I don't think you realized that you had your um, mic on when you were helping your daughter dress. I'm assuming Summer's your daughter. Maybe not. You can request again, friend. I'll bring you back up. That
That was awesome.
was funny.
That was good.
Yeah.
I'm going to go to
Okay.
one of my bookshelves real quick. I'm not going anywhere, but I just had this thought. So
Okay. Go for it.
if you see me walking around, it's because I'm trying to put two and two together in my head.
You got it. You got it. So, just as a reminder to folks that are just curious as to why, if you've tried to give gifts, because I've been part of a in support and solidarity for BIPOC creators on TikTok. There is a hashtag campaign, hashtag CoinCott, hashtag CoinCott. The idea behind it is that a lot of BIPOC creators get their content suppressed on TikTok, and the goal is because TikTok generates revenue from coins that are gifted to people during lives. So the request then would be to have people who do live streams like this one, for example, turn off that feature so that at the end of next week, when TikTok does an evaluation and say, geez, why did our revenue dip during this week period? They might see that trend and hopefully it does something. So that's kind of the goal. So thank you, friends, for sharing that hashtag and then maybe remind other creators. And they also ask that you not recharge your coins during this week as well. So then I know some people use this stream for revenue. And hopefully people can just, for a week, we can do this in solidarity with our fellow BIPOC creators and hopefully we'll make that right because I think it's necessary. Problem is one cannot follow guests then. Yeah, I know it's just a week though. I think the problem is like I know some people from the live Like I can see everybody else's profile who comes up, even though I can't gift them. Anthony said he couldn't see people's profiles because he was on the panel. So I'm not sure if that is how it works, but I'm glad we're doing this, and I appreciate being turned on to it. Yeah, please do not gift thank you, brother. Please do not gift or what was the other request here? Hang on one second. Please do not gift or recharge coins in solidarity. So that's the ask. Technically, it starts tomorrow, which, by the way, is Groundhog Day.
What?
Yes. So I have a quick Puctatawny Phil story. I was about 7 years old, maybe, and I have family in Western Pennsylvania, Reading, the Reading area, and we were coming back from visiting them. And as my dad used to tell the story, there was a groundhog that ran out in front of the car, and we hit it. And my dad said there'll never be another Groundhog Day because we took out Puctatawny Phil.
Oh, dude.
But there was the next year. I'm like, what? I was kind of like, again, as an inquisitive kid, I'm like, you mean there's not a backup? It's going to end? There's never going to be another? And my mother would be like, oh my gosh, rolling her eyes.
Have you read this yet?
Let me give you the big screen. No.
Write it down.
Doing it now. Okay, got it.
Okay. If this doesn't now it's not light reading. It's
okay.
It's thick. Not saying that you can't figure it out, but
why don't you tell people the title? Because I think that I would have to invert the screen. I don't want to drop the live. I would screw it up.
Anti-fragile things that gain from disorder. It's well, I guess no matter how I hold it, it won't work. I need a mirror. Given what you and I do, or what we're trying to do here, and again, I'd like to publicly thank you for letting me tag along. This is quite awesome.
Yeah, buddy.
This will reaffirm some beliefs. This will challenge some beliefs, and hopefully some new things will manifest. It's that good of a book. So Nassam Nichols Talib, if you're out there, thank you for writing this.
You want to give us the cliff notes?
I think normally I would.
Okay. Fair enough.
But the discovery for me, for this guy, right? For this nerd, I was gifted this book. So I'm going to gift it to you.
Thank you, brother.
I'm going to send you a copy, so I'll email you later.
Thank you, man.
I think certain books come at certain times in life. And one of the things that I wanted to do when we discussed having the funnel of truth, remember, is I wanted to talk about books. Now, I am not recommending this book for everyone to read, right? It's a lot of content, and it's not something that necessarily you would take to the beach on a summer vacation, unless you're my particular kind of nerd.
By the way, you were asked to, at some point, drop the name of the title and the author in the chat.
Oh, God.
You don't have to do it right now, but just at some point, just drop it in the chat.
Yep, I will. One of my most favorite things about literature in general, right? Like the first time I read a Bernard Shaw play, it just froze me in my tracks.
Sure.
Right. The first time I read Greek tragedies, I was like, oh, these fucking stories are awesome. This is like sci-fi before sci-fi. This is like fantasy before fantasy, right?
Right. First time I started to understand Shakespeare falls in the same category. Yep.
Yes. And
Yep.
then the more Ursula Le Guin that I read, the more I understood Greek tragedies that I'd already fallen in love with, right? My point here is that part of the funnel of truth is understanding how there's this inverted pyramid, right? And how broad-based learning used to be at the top, right? Accessibility, broad-based learning. Everyone had a certain level of access publicly. I get that there were clearly some public school systems that were incredibly unfunded and purposefully unfunded. That's a separate topic. Now what we have is we have a movement to restrict that funnel of truth so that the only drips out of it that you get are those that they can spoon fed to you, because they don't want you back at the top of the funnel where you could access information for free, go to a library, right? This is the type of book that, in a really positive way, gave me pause, made me think. I will tell you that when I read this book, I went through 2 different legal pads.
Oh no!
Right. So, because some books I won't dog here, but some things I'll write down, and I'm like, man. And the greatest gift of books is it really shares with you another person's imagination, another person's thought process, and something that you and I have talked about. If you're feeling down or you're feeling alone or you're having a particular set of thoughts, right? I'm not a licensed therapist, but I am somebody who suffers from PTSD, depression, and is bipolar, right? And I don't care if people know that, because whatever, right? Books are the way in which I help manage my stress. It's a tool that I use to get out of my head, to remove negative thoughts. I'm not saying it's going to work for everyone. It works for me. So let's also remember in these lives that we do create a safe space, that people can reach out, that people can talk to us, because a lot of what we nibble on the edges is about the importance of mental health, right? And that too is under attack by the GOP, because they want to cut funding. They don't want to give veterans like myself freer access. I know we just had a new bill and it's coming, and it'll slowly get there. But it's so important for us to encourage people to read, to question, right? Don't take what Fax and I say on face value. Write something down and come challenge us. We appreciate that.
Absolutely.
We want you to come challenge us. And then in the end, you're going to end up challenging yourself, because we are all in this together, regardless of your political affiliation. At the end of the day, unless you're in the 1%, and I guarantee you nobody in this live right now is in the 1%.
Nope, nobody here either.
They're not going to invite you to the table, have you over for Christmas, or even let you sit at the kiddies' table at Thanksgiving. But Fax and I will always be here to help you challenge us, so that we can challenge you, so that we can find the similarities. And now the fact funnel will shut down, and I will step off my soapbox. But anyway,
that, brother. Well, I appreciate
read books.
that. I appreciate that. They talk about, you gave me a thought about the inverted tunnel, and they approach education the same way. They say, the experts say, the investment should be made earlier on in your children's development, and then the cost of college wouldn't be as prohibitive for so many because of the scholarship opportunities that you would gain from investing in your education earlier. So the system is backwards. Like we pay at the end of our educational journey when we should be paying at the beginning, so to speak.
Yep.
I see you, Rusty. I have a feeling we might get a dad joke, but I'm just throwing that out there. Good evening, sir.
Who came in?
It would be you.
Oh! Wow. Are you spelling sir with a C?
We were talking about the 1%. So there you are.
Yeah, that's it. Um, no, I have. This is something I've been bitching about for years because I began to see the decline in education when I was in high school, and back in the 14th century.
Right.
And you hear the when the discussion about smart people being denigrated.
Mm.
We've always been denigrated. And, I include myself among reasonably intelligent people. And I'm often reminded of the
Mm.
movie RoboCop. And the scene where one of the criminals is robbing a gas station, and the guy behind the plexiglass has an advanced algebra book. And he just starts looking at him going, "Oh, are you a college boy? Oh, you think you're smarter than me, college?" Because he has a firearm. He's
Mm.
able to scare and manipulate this guy who's just trying to get an education and work a part-time job at night.
Right.
And it's that they don't want to be educated because they have every opportunity in the world to do so, and then they want to turn around and bash the who do. And it's how they can stay on their soapbox and feel like they're the okay, Diane, I've seen that deleted scene.
Yeah, Diane,
Um,
how many times have you watched it and then rewatched it, Diane? That's what I want to know.
that's one of the funniest things I've seen out there, and it makes me cringe every time. Be nice. Anyway, I think Diane's trying to get a little revenge on dudes on that one, but I digress. Um, but uh, I'm so sick and tired of the willfully ignorant
Mm.
um, beating their chest and acting like they're far more educated and important than those of us who actually will crack open a book and actually will look at something critically and understand what critical thinking is and don't take everything at face value,
Mm.
and have done our fucking research. And it
You,
just makes me
you know,
cringe.
Rusty, you got me thinking about something about like when we were, we're all contemporaries more or less, and when we were in school, there was like, you had the various cliques, especially in high school. My mom used to call me the UN because I had my local my neighborhood friends, I had my sports friends, I had my music friends, I had my theater friends. I swam in many many waters, and I
Yep.
think I didn't notice the how do I put this? I didn't notice the attacks on education then as much post high school, post college as I do now. What I'm trying to say is because we all grew up together. We know that you had your AP classes, and some kids were in the AP classes, but then you met at the lunch table and you all just shot the shit and you smoked your cigarettes on the loading dock or whatever it was. So it wasn't as defined. But as we got further away from town, a lot of those people got left behind by their choice or whatever happened. So then other people went other places. They gained more in life. So then you come back and they're the same and you changed. So they look at you differently. And now you're the college boy with the algebra book behind the plexiglass in the RoboCop movie. Diane, um, does that make sense? What I said there?
It,
Does that
it
make
it
sense?
absolutely does. And first, hi Nikki in the chat, and two, the Graybeard Brigade.
Right? Indeed.
I should have jumped in earlier, but I couldn't.
It's all good.
Um, but yeah, I always I didn't notice as a kid, but my mother in particular always took pride in the fact that I had a very wide range of friends from all sorts of ethnicities and backgrounds and uh, intelligence levels and what have you. I didn't care,
Mm-hmm.
and the person was worth knowing. Then I got to know them, and then yeah, as I got older, some of that started to change, especially
high school when a lot of guys. I mean, I hung out with the stoners mostly because
Yeah,
they had the best albums,
totally.
and yeah, and I'm going to concerts every week. While the other wannabe rocket scientists are at home studying. It's like, oh, I'm studying hot chicks and spandex while I'm sitting here at a concert. So I found my niche, but um, it 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 scares me how now when we were kids and we all had these weird fantasies about what's going to happen after the millennium.
Right,
Oh, we're all going to have flying cars and living on Mars.
right.
And now people think the fucking Earth is flat again, and and
That's
they
true.
yeah,
But
and they
we've
follow
come
this.
we've come full circle a little bit.
We have, and they follow this total charlatan.
Mm,
And I look at people and go, how are you buying the snake oil?
mm.
How? I learned not to buy that crap in elementary school. But you're in hook, line, and sinker. And it does. I remember in particular, because I know you and I both discussed that we've lost friends
Oh yeah.
because of 45
Yep.
and MAGA. A particular friend of mine who was a roommate of mine back when I was in school. So he and I have been friends for, geez, almost 40 years. I had to cut him loose because he's a really smart guy. He's one of the funniest people I ever knew. I got tons of fun anecdotes about he and I, but I had to cut him loose because he went down the rabbit hole. And I couldn't wrap my brain around he's one of the smartest people I know. How has he gone down the rabbit hole? And I was talking to a mutual friend of ours who had known him even longer. They'd known each other since elementary school.
Wow.
And he said, I'm now remembering what I thought at the time were really off color jokes, but now they're showing his inherent racism.
Interesting.
And that's now been pushed to the forefront and endorsed and empowered by 45. And he now feels superior. And he was always a, cocky cuss. That's why I got along with him. But it now he feels superior
So
to.
like YT supremacy superior?
I can't confirm that,
Okay.
but I can confirm he feels intellectually superior
Gotcha.
because I know something you don't know.
Right.
And earlier when you and Anthony were discussing just showing these people the facts, showing them like the news source information you're telling people, I can guarantee, and if it hasn't been in the chat, it'll be in some other. You're going to hear them say that's a Democratic source.
Right.
They're just they won't accept that they could even remotely be wrong.
Right.
Whereas we will sit there. I was talking to somebody earlier today who is a friend of mine who has now left the Republican Party and he's an independent. He still leans conservative, but he's become an independent. And he knows I'm a hippie lefty. And I said, look, I look at conservatism like a broken watch. It's potentially right twice a day.
Mm.
But every other minute of the day, nope, it's wrong. Absolutely 100% wrong. But I have to be intellectually honest and say, hey, you know what? They might be right about X, but it depends on what X is. And by God, they better show me all their evidence. And
So, we have, it's almost, we have an explanation. Thank you for what you just said. It makes a lot of sense. We have an explanation for the people who are, the small town folks that have never left, right? That we can understand the draw to this, whatever you want to call MAGA, the cult, right?
Mhm.
How do we explain those that have been to the Ivy League schools? How do we explain to those that have achieved much from an education perspective in their life? How do we
Okay,
explain them?
for I don't know that I can whitewash all of them and say, well, for all of them, it falls into this. But I can tell you for somebody like Ted Cruz, he is a craven weasel. And I mean, it doesn't matter how high his education is. You got this turd on a debate stage, insulting his wife, accusing his father of being involved in the JFK assassination,
I know, right?
and all that, and then Lindsey Graham talking shit about Trump before Trump became the nominee,
Right.
laying it all out. Anybody who believes this guy is a fool. Oh wait, he's the nominee. That's my man. I'm behind him 100%. They're in it for the power.
The power,
They
yeah, the power, the grift.
absolutely, and
Mm.
I think that maybe um, some people are smart without integrity
Mm.
versus smart with integrity. And those who have no integrity, you can be a rocket scientist, and if you have no integrity, then you'll glom on to any shooting star you think will get you somewhere. And uh, otherwise, no. You if you have that little shred of integrity that says, you know what, it's not worth it. It's not. I got to sleep at night.
Right.
It's not. It's not worth throwing my country down the drain so I can gain a few points. And that's what I think. And now, granted, we've seen it with both parties,
Sure.
but I find that when it's Democrats that get in trouble, the rest of us go, I am disappointed. I am angry that you betrayed our trust, but out you go.
Exactly.
Goodbye. And
Exactly.
yeah, and I think the right mixes up when we get disappointed um, for being weak
Right. I've
or
always it's this phenomenon, and I'm glad you said that because I've had conversations with people like when I say things like, if Joe Biden had done a tenth of the things that Donald Trump has done, I don't need convictions. I would be like, impeach his ass, indict him, and throw him in fucking jail, and I won't leave a second sleep over it. And they don't believe me because of their loyalty to Trump. They expect us on the left to have the same level of loyalty towards Biden. And I think
well,
that's
and it's
part of that. That's that cult behavior, right?
well, absolutely, and it's the same thing when you hear them say, "Oh, I don't see a lot of Biden merch." Well, yeah, because we're not in a fucking cult.
Exactly.
We
So,
don't
so that's right.
Biden merch.
So Poe, I think you said you had a theory.
Hey,
Is what we're talking about. How are you?
hi, I'm good. I'm good. I do have a theory because um about February of 2017, so shortly after Trump took office, and and Michael Flynn was the security advisor, and there was a big kerfuffle because Sally Yates had gone to uh, Trump, who was president at the time, and said he's compromised by Russia.
Right.
And so I was in a fight on a Fox News thread about why this was bad and why Mike Flynn should be removed at the time. But
Oop,
echo.
we're good. We got you.
Um, am I
No, we got you.
echo?
No, there is now. Yep.
Okay, I got to drop down. Am I
Okay. We'll bring it right
okay?
back up. Bring it right back up. But so yeah, so that's part of that phenomenon, Rusty, that we see, right? We see people in this world that they don't understand why we don't have that loyalty because I don't own. They're employees. They work for me. They have to earn my shit. They got to earn my vote. And if you behave badly, I'm going to hold your ass accountable and vote your fucking ass out. So let's let her finish her story
Exactly.
because I was intrigued. All right,
Yeah.
friend, you're
So
back.
anyway, in a Fox News thread, there were all these people that were attacking me because I was attacking Trump. I didn't like that Trump was elected because, like, right before the election, he came out with that grab him by the thing
Yep.
and the payment to Stormy Daniels and Karen McDougal, and so I didn't like him anyway. But then he gets in, and his first appointment is Flynn to national security or something, and Sally Yates knows he's compromised by Russians, which we had all suspected and we heard anyway. So so I'm fighting with these people under this thread, and they're all attacking me, and I'm just like, this is crazy. Why are people just not engaging in conversation? They're just attacking. And then came the first time I ever heard that phrase, where we go one, we go all.
Mm.
QAnon. And I was like, what is QAnon?
Mm.
So I Googled it, and I started following QAnon, and I followed QAnon and listened to the daily drops for about 2 months.
Wow.
And I did it not because I believed it, or I did it because I was like, what is this that has these people so spooled up and so weirdly loyal to this man? And QAnon's entire purpose is to excuse every single thing that Trump did. Every bit of corruption, they had an explanation for. Everything, they even went back to like the Rothschilds, and they went to this big explanation on the world cabal that is run by people, and even the sacrificing of children by
Mm.
Democrats and the blood drinking and all of that stuff. And don't believe the CIA, don't believe the FBI, don't believe the press. They're all part of the deep state. And the only person that, according to this organization and club membership, that you could trust was Donald Trump.
Mm.
And so it didn't matter what he did. QAnon had an excuse for it. And the weird thing is that that excuse would then circulate through right-wing media. It would circulate through the mouths of the representatives on the right-hand side, and it
Mm.
would even circulate through Trump. And they would drop like 4 things that were going to happen this next week. And you would watch for those 4 things to happen. Like, are they really going to happen? Is this guy really got a Q clearance, you know? And what you would end up seeing is that 1 to 2 of the things would happen that week. So they did what's called intermittent reward in psychological terms, where if you always give your dog a treat at the table, then he's gonna be a big beggar. But if you intermittently give your dog a treat at the table, he's gonna never give up on begging.
Mm.
And if you want to train your child to do something consistently, you intermittently reward them, and you get more of a patterned kind of compulsive addiction to whatever it is. Well, it was small things like watch the bunny on Easter on the balcony next to Trump. So I turned it on Easter to see what was going to happen with the bunny next to Trump on the balcony. And that fucking bunny made the Q sign in the air.
Oh man.
And Trump, at his rallies will point at Q people and give him a thumbs up. Like he's validating this propaganda disinformation. That's what it is. And in that way, combined with the intermittent rewards, I began to see QAnon as a terrorist training organization. I knew that it
Yeah.
would create such loyalty. I mean, we just had this week, we had a kid or a young man, 30 something, behead his father
Yeah.
over QAnon.
Yep.
And because his father was a government employee. We had
Right.
that man down in San Diego killed his 2 kids because
Unalive.
he thought they were lizard people,
Right.
like,
Exactly.
from QAnon disinformation. It's insane, and it's disinformation, and it is to create this blind addiction loyalty to Trump, and the other Republicans are looking around and they're like, well, everybody else is still on Trump, so I guess I'm still on Trump. It's like this crowd addiction that's going on with them. And at this point, there is no way to break that crowd. I don't know why they don't get angry that their entire side of the political spectrum is lying to them. And you can see the lies. You can see that Trump never, even though they gave numerous dates, he never stepped back into the White House.
That's
I
right.
mean, that was a lie. The fact that the election was, he said the election was rigged and they did recounts in every state. And it went through all the proper procedures to make sure that there was no fraud. And there was no fraud. And yet, they're still believing the lies because the lies keep coming. And the disturbing thing to me, honestly, when we're talking about media, is that while we were doing all that, right-wing billionaires were buying up CNN, were buying up the local news stations, were buying up local newspapers, were moving it like a coordinated effort. I mean, you want to talk about a deep state. A deep state protects corruption. And this
Heck
deep
yeah.
state that the right wing has built is protecting the most corruption we've ever seen in our government.
Indeed.
With Trump on his constant grift, and the way that the right-wing media lies and lies and lies and lies, and the minute somebody can't lie, like Liz Cheney, they get cast out of the party. They get
That's right.
censored for not lying. And George Santos, he can join the party. He can lie about everything, including like being an Olympic champion or something, and he's perfectly welcome because they need that level of corruption in their party, and they're not mad about it. Like, the Republicans aren't mad about it. I don't understand that. I would be furious. I would definitely stop sending them any money, which it looks like a lot of Republicans have stopped sending money to the Republican Party because they're totally going broke now. And in multiple states and in the RNC, all going broke, So, and Trump can't hardly fundraise either. So it looks like the people are starting to get sick of him. I hope they are. I
Yeah, I
hope
mean,
they're starting to figure out that they've been lied to.
I guess the
But
question
I
for
don't know.
me, and thank you for that breakdown, Poe. That's awesome. I mean, it makes a lot of sense. I guess the question for me is because um, we don't, at least I haven't, we don't seem to hear about Q as much anymore. And I'm not sure if that's a good thing or a bad thing. Like, it's still continuing to bubble beneath the surface, I guess the question is he, if Trump is the vessel, meaning that he's the person that they're protecting, and the lie apologists, we already know that they apologize for everything that he does. Um, well, they don't, but they're apologists for everything he does. Does that go away? Does that go away when he's no longer in our lexicon, or are we just going to live with this forever? I'm curious about all your opinions on that.
Well, the funny part to me, this seriously cracks me up. Here's this 77-year-old man who's never been successful in business, whose family fortune is built on the backs of prostitutes, who has prostitutes running out of Trump Tower. The Russians are running them, and so are the Chinese, I think, out of Trump Tower. And he's perfectly comfortable with that because that's like his family legacy. And QAnon believes that he's like this fighter of sex trafficking, which is funny because he hung out with Jeffrey Epstein for 15 years, and he was BFFs with him. Like, what your best friend does for a living, and Trump certainly knew what Jeffrey Epstein did for a living, and yet they think that our country that they think is the greatest country ever, that it is all dependent on this one diaper
guy.
crapping 77-year-old heart attack waiting for a Big Mac man. Like, and if he doesn't get elected,
So then,
if he doesn't get elected, our whole country's gonna fall apart. It's like, oh, please. When was the United States?
so he is the linchpin then, from your perspective. That's my question. So if he's no longer in our lexicon, he's then the Q movement moves to someone else, which I doubt, or it just kind of dissipates. Rusty, your thoughts on that?
A couple of things. When he eventually kicks the bucket, one, MAGA's never going to believe it. They're just they're going to say it's an op or it's just. I'm reminded of an episode of Alex Jones show. I only saw a small clip of this. He's interviewing some guy who wrote a book. And he's interviewing him on the phone, and the guy's a total Q conspiracy guy who toward the end of the interview was saying that we have bases on Mars where we traffic children so the Clintons can go there and perform sacrifices and essay.
Chrome and the whole 9 yards, yeah.
Right, and even Alex Jones, the look he had on his face was almost, what have I done? What have I done to allow this to go this far? But he went, well, yeah, and I bet the frogs are gay and whatever. And it's as long as there is
for educational purposes only, TikTok, for educational purposes only.
Educational.
Yeah, as long as there is a nickel to be made in the grift, I think the grift will be there. It may change and it may morph. And I know you and I, Pax, have talked about this before. We remember when you had the old guy down the street who would walk around talking to himself because he was batshit crazy.
Right.
Then came the internet.
Yeah.
And all these people from all these towns can talk to each other.
That's right.
And now they're a voting block. And I don't think if Trump goes away, that maybe not Q itself, but something like it will take its place. There'll be a vacuum.
And what I see, Rusty.
Hang on 1 second, Poe. I want to get Anthony's perspective on that. Go ahead. Your thoughts on that?
Just be forewarned, I'm in the kitchen, and ladies, you know what that means. I'm doing my job as a man in the kitchen because my wife likes me barefoot in the kitchen cooking dinner, ladies. That's right.
Nice.
Here's the thing, right? And this is kind of something that I Poe and Rusty had said something, and then it reminded me, Q has been here since the 50s. It was called the ham radio. Conspiracy chat rooms started on ham radio.
That's true.
Right? And it continues today on ham radio because pretty much it's not monitored, right? And those guys still have it. But the reason why you don't hear about Q is, remember how there were all these guarantees and promises made? I think a lot of people kind of woke up. It was kind of like rapture. I don't know how many raptures I've had in the last 57 years, but I'm going to guess at least 25 or 30. Also, Elvis and Bruce Lee live on Kauai. Peace.
Right. A rock.
And didn't they sort of develop their own language? I think it's called like gematria or something like that, where it's numerology and then the numbers form patterns and sequences, and then that's the code to communicate. It's like movie shit. It's like sci-fi freaking, it's Dune crap.
Yeah. And by the way, nothing against ham radio, because ham radio is awesome and it's a great way to listen to stuff all around the world, actually learn some things from all around the world. But there's also some batshit crazy people on there. So,
Well, yeah. And I think when you ask if Q will go away, I mean, the difference is that we didn't have our elected representatives validating conspiracy theories. And right now, like I was watching a movie, gosh, what was that movie called the other day? I can't even remember what the movie was called, but I was watching a movie and it had like the president and the White House and all that stuff, and somebody hands a paper to somebody else and they go, and here's your Q clearance. And the fact is there's not really a Q clearance. So somewhere in that Hollywood engine, which they speak out against and they hate, just like they hate that Disney has wokeness going on and they're appealing to kids. They're trying to take over. It's the Seven Mountains Mandate going on. And they're trying to take over all of the funnels. You guys were talking about the funnels of truth. And they want to match the narrative across the board to be this fake narrative, this hyper-Christian nationalist narrative across the board. And I see it happening more in movies. I see it in the types of movies that are being done and getting produced. And it's obvious that the money in Hollywood is behind some of this stuff too. And it's just like the deep state is what we're fighting on the Democratic side, because we're telling the truth. We're grounded in reality. We are trying to solve real problems that our country's having. And on the right, they're crafting this Q narrative with all of these things that are going to happen, and you'll see pretty soon they're going to happen. Pretty soon we're going to be arresting all the deep state and all this stuff. They've got all these gonna happen soons, you guys. Just wait, be patient, trust the plan.
We were talking about this earlier about how, and I mentioned this yesterday, about the right now thinks it's a psyop that Taylor Swift and Travis Kelce are, are whatever the hell they're doing. And I saw Layla mention something in the chat. So, how we can fuck with the right? We can say we know who Q is, and it's Taylor Swift.
No, I don't want to get her killed. I really don't.
That's fair.
And I do think that Taylor Swift ought to file a great big Herkin lawsuit against all right-wing media that carries her name in their mouth under this false narrative, because she is a great human being. She is for all human beings. She doesn't want judgment. She is a true American. She is what all Americans should be if they're living right. She has her own thing going on. She pursued her dreams. She captured billions of dollars doing that. She has been generous to the people that work for her and around her, and she is the American dream come true. She had a talent. She pursued it. She is a remarkable woman, and now she's using her platform and her fame to say, register to vote. What's wrong with that? Nothing's wrong with that, except that it's obvious that she is a Democrat, because she doesn't judge gay people and she doesn't want to burn books, and she's not trying to sing about Jesus all the time. And it's like, I'm so frustrated with them. I want to see them sued. I want their pants sued off, frankly, on the right wing for what they've done to her.
Well, thank you for that, Poe. I appreciate that. I want to give some other folks an opportunity, and thank you, Rusty, for jumping in tonight. You guys, I appreciate you both. I'm gonna drive you both down.
Sorry, y'all.
If you don't mind. It's all
I'll
good.
drop down.
Appreciate
Thank
it.
you.
Thank you.
Take care, brother.
Later, buddy. Anthony, how are you tonight? How are you, Anthony? Anthony Williams. Anthony Wilkinson. Anthony Wilkinson. Apparently he stayed right. A lot of chirping in the chat, but you didn't want to say anything, did you? Not surprising. Not surprising. Okay. Hello, sir.
Really quick, totally spaced out that I put the name and the author of the book in like 20 minutes ago and forgot to have you pin it. I don't know how you find stuff in these. It's probably impossible. So,
You're asking
or
me
else,
with my awesome technical chops to be able to figure that out? No,
bro,
that's.
I'm just saying I can't.
I bet the mods can. They're smarter than I am for sure.
Yeah, yeah. But if not, we'll do it tomorrow and then have it pinned.
Okay.
Anyway, I'm gonna go back to cooking and just listening. But the wife and I love you and your beautiful beard. So we'll see you tomorrow.
Hey, Belle. Be well. Hi, Ann. How are you tonight? Hi, Ann. Ann. Hi, Ann. Okay. That's kind of interesting. All right. I think since I don't have, I'll bring up pizza. JD and Nikki, probably not tonight, guys. Only just because I want to try to wrap up a little bit early. We'll see how that goes. Pizza for breakfast. How are you?
Hi. How are you?
Good. What's on your mind tonight?
I want to apologize in advance. I can't bring any drama with me. But
Okay.
I was, the thing about the cults and everything. Like, I feel like, in 2024, cults are no longer novel. They've just kind of like transformed,
When have they ever been novel?
I mean, I guess when history at some point started. But yeah, I think people always find something to rally, like somebody to rally around or someone to form a cult over. And like, yeah, I think cults should, like, people should fear them. But I also think that if they study them, they know that they've just kind of regurgitate rhetoric that's been used before.
Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
there's a common thread that connects most
Yeah.
cults throughout history.
And
Sure.
I think having that understanding kind of takes their power away.
Yeah.
Because it's like, oh, it's not even something that's like novel that they came up with. It's not necessarily even intelligent because it's just something they copied or borrowed from something else. So it's like, it's very derivative in my opinion.
Yeah, I mean, that makes sense. We know that there's a I'm not going to call it formalized religious aspect, but there's a devotional aspect to the leader of the cult. That's
Yeah.
the common thread, and we know that MAGA is a cult. There's no doubt about it. It's been studied. I mean, the behavior of the people that identify as MAGA fits the mold of cult-like behavior.
That-
Yeah.
And I think that's why I was thinking like, I would be so interested in kind of learning more about the psychology behind it. Not so much about what people are doing or what the words they're using per se, but really the psychology behind that kind of susceptibility to be brought in, to believe something.
Yeah, it's fair. And we were talking about that a little bit earlier about, the susceptibility of people who don't have critical thinking to be able to know, first of all, that they're in a cult or their behavior is cult-like. That that answers the question for people who we got. There are stereotypical images of MAGA that we
Yeah.
know what they look like, right? But then there's the people that we wouldn't necessarily identify as MAGA, but yet they are. They may have achieved more in life. They might have reached levels of higher education. They may be white collar professionals, and yet they're still into that.
Yeah.
I see them more on the Q side because I think there's a different sort of rationale that they might have to justify as to, like Rusty said earlier, like they're in the know. They know something that somebody else doesn't, and that kind of gives them this position of power,
And it's
right?
funny, often the ones on top are completely the ones who are not indoctrinated. They know exactly what they're doing. Like, as you say this word a lot, grifters, and that's what they are.
They are.
And I think when I talk about kind of it not being novel, because I think in terms of the psychology of it, it's you prey upon people who are disenfranchised, who have low education, who might be suffering with certain conditions, and it's like the same cycle of finding a scapegoat. Like, this is the person who's responsible for your problem, or the people. And it's very telling. Like, I'm Jewish, so it's like every time I hear this whole like, it's the Rothschilds, I'm just like, ugh. It's like, it's not even
Or the
clever.
great replacement theory or whatever it is, that everything is
Yeah.
routed in white supremacy, no doubt about it.
Yeah. Anyway, so that's what came to mind, and I thought it was funny that Anthony brought up the ham radio thing, and I know I'm like a little bit younger, but was he? I guess he was talking about like those people who would like be like, I'm Mr. X, and I'm telling you the truth. Yeah.
Yeah,
And I think
exactly.
He's right. It's always been around, but I guess the difference now is that communication is so much easier.
Certainly.
The sending of information, like no one needs to send like a telegraph anymore. Like it's just instantaneous. So it's
Yeah,
so much
it's a
easier.
fair point, and Rusty sort of alluded to that too, right? Where it used to be just the weird guy down the road that you're told your kids not to go near that house.
Hmm.
Now, because of social media and because of the way in which our world is interconnected, they've always been there.
Yes.
They now form like the hive mentality, right? They group together. They're all part of the same sort of message boards, or they're in the dark recesses of the web, or they're
Yeah.
on apps like Parlor, things like that. So they've always been there. Now it just gets amplified, and now they're recruiting.
Yes.
Now they're recruiting people.
Oh yeah.
That's the dangerous part, right?
And you see it on here too all the time.
Oh yeah, you really do. That's a good perspective, friend. Appreciate
Yeah.
that.
Thanks.
Thanks.
That's all I wanted to say. I hope I don't come on here too often that you're bored of me. So.
No, never. I love it. Thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
All
Have a
right.
good
Take
night.
care.
All right, bye.
Bye.
I've got time for, I think, one or two more. We'll do Rezo first.
Yeah,
We're so
hello.
glad. How are you tonight? How are you?
Are you gonna get an echo from my speaker? Do I need to turn that off?
No, I think I'm good. I'm good so far.
Okay, great. Okay, I just wanted to, I had something great, fantastical, fantastical. I made that up. ADHD. Um, what was it? Yesterday or the day before? One of the lives that you had, and I forgot what it was because of ADHD, and I didn't write it down because it was just that quick. But I had a couple of things. What do these MAGA people, individuals, do they really believe this, or are they just so into the original lie that they just can't force themselves? I don't know if you as a kid ever lied about something and got caught and you just never gave up the lie. You're just like, until it was beaten out of you or something. I remember doing that once. I only did it once when I was real young, and they got beaten out of me. But is it
It was always
something?
the guilt. It was always the guilt in my house. My mother.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, that one kind of got me too. I would get the switch from the neighbors. It was all around kind of thing. It was a festival.
So is your question, so I don't think everybody that's MAGA is Q.
No, 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 no. No, I wasn't going that far. I just don't know. Do they really believe this lie?
Yeah.
Can they not see any of the truths, even though it's? I mean, it's really that simple.
Yeah, I think it is. I mean,
Wow.
well, think about
Wow,
it.
that's depressing.
Well, think about where we are, right?
Get right.
We're almost 8 years out from 2016 when he was elected. We know that he told 35,000 lies as president. We know that he's done all these things. We know that they don't read the indictments. We know that they apologize. They're apologists for his sexual abuse.
Oh yeah, everything.
Everything. So
I mean, and
it's one of two things. It's either, well, it's probably both. It's willful ignorance and that confirmation bias because they like the narrative that they like his bigotry, they like his racism,
well,
they like
how
his
about this? How about because they are similar like people to him? How about that? That's scarier.
They're nothing like him.
Well, I mean, they're not huge. Well, I don't know if they are or not. Huge failures at everything they've done, except for actually make the highest office in the land.
Well, yeah, so it's similar. Yeah, I mean, like I've always said that he's provided cover for their racism and their bigotry and their transphobia and everything else, right? So
yeah,
they're similar in that regard, but he despises them. He despises them. He would never sit across the table from somebody who identifies as MAGA. Are you kidding me? No way. He hates them.
And he's only. I don't know. I don't know how to. He's not. He's racist. It's proven. It was in law between the courts and his dad and him. They were sued and found guilty for discriminating against the tenants in their buildings. I mean, it's fact. But they like to say, well, look at all the black people he hung around, like the boxing king. I forgot what his name was. Tom. Yeah, but it's because they had money. They're not seen as black anymore. They're seen as money people, and that's what people don't get that.
Yeah,
Um,
they call it the proximity to power.
Now, I have one big one. This is one I kind of thought of. It's kind of a conspiracy trail, kind of maybe going off left, but I just wanted to ask it and see what you thought. Um, so everything seems to be pointed towards them, whoever they are. I guess the people that keep the money, because I don't even know who they, when they say them, are. But like they don't want us to be smart. They how the dumbing down of the herd, the cow. I understand that. But why would you want them to be completely ignorant? I don't understand that part. What's the ends to the mean? You can only squeeze, and they are very, like, the way things are turning out right now. Everything is almost last drop right now. Things are tight on people's nerves, and it could spring, I would think. And not for Trump. This is just the world in America, as I see it. With nobody can afford housing like they used to, or they say they can't. The jobs aren't paying but minimum, but they're not. Inflation is way over what minimum wage can ever make you. I mean, used to you could work one job and pay for everything, but now you can't get.
Not with.
Well, yeah, I know you had to work extra hours and pick up here and there, but I mean, it was. I think it was a little bit easier. Not easy. It was never easy. It's never been easy. But I think it's a little. It's a little out there more than. Or am I wrong? Maybe I miss.
It's not. It's not a question of you're wrong. Yes, I guess if the question is, do things cost more now than they did a few years ago? Yes.
Yeah.
But we have to understand. We have to understand the circumstances, and this is where media literacy is important. So for people in education, people be willing to understand why. People to understand how global economy works.
Right.
A lot of feedback, though. Just try to sit in one spot if you can.
Oh, sorry, I was picking up some.
That's right.
Paper.
So when people have to understand how a global economy works. What basic economic principles of supply and demand? What a global pandemic did to supply chains around the world that in some cases we're still recovering from. So people don't understand those nuances to that conversation, and it's so easy to say it's Joe Biden's fault. Like if Donald Trump were the president and we had 9.1 inflation, I wouldn't have blamed him because I know how the process works. That's the point. That's the danger that we get into with all these narratives that spin in people's heads, thinking that they are experts on something when they're just not. So
It's the same. It's the same with the war in Ukraine. People say, "Well, why are we helping them? Why are we sending them money?" Well, it starts there, but it doesn't end there. Look at the process. I mean,
exactly.
And you wouldn't let your friend. I mean, just simple it down. You wouldn't let your friend right next to you get beat up if you could stop it, would you? I mean, I don't.
It's as simple as that, and I appreciate that, Rezo. And I got to wrap things up though. But I appreciate you jumping in.
No
appreciate
worries.
your perspective, man. Thanks a lot.
Yeah, anytime. I love the show.
Thanks, man. Have a good night.
Yep.
So again, a good conversation. I think it's a good spot to leave it because that's an example of some of the things of a lack of understanding of how things work. It's easy to blame. It's difficult to understand. Like, again, it's easy to blame somebody for something. The question is, are you willing to understand the why behind it? Because there's always a why. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, Anthony, for your co-hosting. Thank you, everybody, for joining tonight. Thank you for supporting CoinCot. We're going to continue to do that for the next week when we do lives. So it's hashtag CoinCot. You'll probably start to see it a lot more as we support and stand in solidarity with our BIPOC creators. Thank you, everybody, very, very much. More primaries coming. Please, if you're not yet registered to vote, please, what are you waiting for? If you don't know how to register to vote, go to your state's your state Secretary of State's website. All the information you would need to register is there. Find out when your primary is. Please be involved. Democracy is not a spectator sport. Thanks, friends. Have a good night. Be well.